What is up, duelists, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh discussion video. And today we have the sequel of our epic adventure of talking about every single card on the Yu-Gi-Oh ban list. I've done all the banned cards already, where I discussed whether a card should stay banned or whether it should come back. And today we are taking the time to take a look at every limited and semi-limited card and talking about why they're there, if they should stay there, if they should maybe even get banned, or in some cases also if they should just get off of the ban list and be legal at 3. I hope you enjoyed the discussion video just as much as you did with the first one. Without further ado, let's get started. Let's jump right in. Let's have some discussion about every single limited cards. And we're starting with two Bystials that we can probably do at once. Bystial Jerusalem and Bystial Magnamud, both released during Tearlaments format pretty much, as, just happened to be really good counters to the Tearlament strategy, but have since, of course, made their ways into a lot of decks. I personally love Bystial Magnamud. To me, it feels like the way hand traps should be. You're not negating anything, you are just slightly interrupting your opponent's graveyard, but you're not giving up cards for it because you do get a search in the end phase from it. So it's a fun card to play with. I enjoy Magnamud, but I also do recognize it is a very, very powerful card. And sometimes when you get hit with it, it feels really, really unfair when it's like, oh, my opponent is disrupting my graveyard and then also searching whatever they want in the end phase. I think Magnamud feels at its strongest when it searches not another Bystial, but instead it searches like a Fallen of the White Dragon. Like when you go second and Magnamud is just interruption, but also a starter and a body on the field, right? So I think maybe they should have made it so that it searches a Bystial monster and not any dragon, for example. That could have been an easy or a good balancing change on Magnamud. I do think Magnamud is definitely too strong to get off of the limited section. I feel like this is one of those cards where I can even see some people who want this card banned. I personally like the card, so I wouldn't advocate for a ban, but it's one of those cards where I wouldn't complain if they got rid of it. Like if this is one of those cards, I personally wouldn't ban it, but if they decided to ban it, I would be like, okay, I get it. I understand. You know, it's not unreasonable to want Bystial Magnamud to be banned. Druisworm, on the other hand, I think is a fair limit. Once again, when this happened, I did not complain about it. I think this is a fine limit. I enjoy playing with Bystial Druisworm as well. It feels like an interactive card because it's mostly removal based, you know, get some graveyard interaction and some removal and a sizable body. Nothing too crazy here, but I do think it is fair for this card to be limited. But this one, I would say, probably, never deserves to be banned. And honestly, at some point in the near future or in the upcoming years, I could see this card moving off of the ban list with basically no problem. Like, I think this card could easily go to 2 or to 3 in the near future, definitely in a year or two. I could see this card coming back. But yeah. So those are the two Bystials. Of course, these are just basically generic hand traps, even though they are technically part of an archetype. I get asked very frequently where I get my TCG accessories from, like these Fallen and the Virtuous sleeves I've been using for my extra deck lately, or the Moltrami sleeves I've been using for my main deck for a while now, as well as something like this Ray and Rose playmat. Of course, you guys know the drill. Oh my god, yes. All of these are OCG exclusive products, meaning they are officially Konami licensed, but they are very hard to come by in the West because you can only buy them or win them at OCG Japan tournaments or stores, meaning that they are very hard to find over here in the West. And this is where the sponsor of today's video comes in, Yugioh. Yugioh has been sponsoring the channel for a while now, and they sell all kinds of OCG products. They import them over from Japan and make them available to people over here in the West, which is awesome. You can check out their store. The link is in the description down below. You can use Josh10 for 10% off your order and to support the channel a little bit. They are based in Germany, but they do ship worldwide, and they have a variety of different TCG accessories, so you can just check what you want. The OCG has a bunch of really, really cool artworks on their playmats and sleeves and so on and so forth. So thank you to Yugioh for being a longtime sponsor of the channel. I hope you guys find something that you like, and don't forget to use Josh10 for 10% off your order. Let's get back to the video. And then we have Cupsy Yummy, which is a card that was limited somewhat recently as a way to hit the Yummy deck. It was an effective way at doing it. I mean, Yummy is one of those decks that is very notorious for bridging, and this card is highly searchable by Cupsy Yummy Way, of course. So the Yummy decks don't really lose access to Kapsuyami just because it's limited. And of course, you also don't really run out of Kapsuyami because you have plenty of ways to summon it back from the graveyard in the Yummy deck. So ultimately, this is in some ways a consistency hit, but a consistency hit that was easily replaceable by other means of searching it. I think this is a fair limit because it was just one of the strongest starters in the deck by far, because you would normal summon it, you would threaten to search an extender in Marshmallow or Surprise, and then you would also threaten the Link 1. So it's one of those really powerful plays that when your one normal summon basically beats any one interruption, that could be a problem. And so limiting it to one, I think, was a pretty elegant thing to do in hindsight. And I think as at the moment, with how fresh this hit is, I think I would leave it here for a while. Probably. I think Kapsuyami can stay here for a while before it ever comes back. Even though, I mean, the thing is, Yummy is still doing okay. There's actually, it's not the most popular deck, but I think it did get like top 4 at German Nationals, which is not that long ago. And that was a big tournament as well. So Yummy is still decent. So I don't see a need to bring this guy back right now. And now we have the first entry into a category of cards that we are going to meet a couple of today in this discussion, where you look at them and you're like, why the hell is this card limited? This card is obviously a problem and should obviously be banned. Dimension Shifter, of course, Lingering Floodgate. I don't have anyone who's entered a modern Yu-Gi-Oh tournament will understand the horrors of Dimension Shifter. I cannot explain why this card is limited. I think realizing that this card was a problem was one of the most important things. When this card was at 3 for like 5+ years, which is crazy. This card came out in 2019, and I think it was limited somewhere in 2025, which is insane to me. Absolutely insane to me. Sometimes I think that they leave cards at 1 on purpose because it keeps the game exciting. If someone draws a random 1-of, it's a very like, oh, crazy moment in feature matches when someone opens like the 1-of Shifter going second, or when a random rogue deck opens the 1-of Shifter. I think that's why they keep these cards limited. Personally, I don't agree with that. I think if you identify a card as a problem, then, you know, we actually should ban it and not just leave it randomly at 1 for it to ruin games. This is a philosophy that we are going to encounter on multiple cards. Shifter is just going to be the first culprit, but I personally think cards that say your opponent cannot play the game should not be in a 2-player game, and this is one of these cards. So please get rid of Dimension Shifter sooner rather than later. Dracotail Mululu was a hit to Dracotail. I mean, in the banned section, we had a lot more like really powerful cards that were like obviously banned for good reason. In the limited section, we're going to encounter more cards like this, which are just solid cards or really good cards in a recent meta strategy that they decided to limit to just make that deck a little bit weaker. Mululu was their choice to hit Dracotail a little bit. We're going to encounter more Dracotail hits on the ban list. Personally, I am a little bit sad that we have this many Dracotail cards on the ban list, and there are a lot of Dracotail cards on the ban list. We are going to see a bunch of them. I personally still think the reason why they ended up having to hit Dracotail this hard was the fact that they made Fallen of the White Dragon. Because before Fallen of the White Dragon, Dracotail was a really fair mid-range deck, and then it became a deck with a much higher ceiling. All of a sudden, if you drew Dracotail cards and branded cards, your deck did a lot. I do hope that eventually, if they end up hitting branded in some way, shape, or form, that they bring back the Dracotail cards. But until they do that, I think hitting the Dracotail cards was unfortunately the only option they had, because yes, branded Dracotail was the best deck in the format and it was really strong, and they just made the branded cards, so they didn't want to hit those. So Dracotail unfortunately had to die for the sins of branded. The same thing that happened to Vanquish Soul when they made K9, where Vanquish Soul was a fine deck, and then with K9 it was too strong, so they hit the Vanquish Soul cards and not the K9 cards initially. So yeah, it's a little sad, but it made sense. Exodia, the Forbidden One, and I guess alongside all the other Exodia pieces. It's funny because I actually don't think these cards need to be on the ban list. I genuinely think the reason why they have them here is just because it's one of the most iconic limited cards of all time. Like, these cards have been limited since the very early days, like the very first limited list I'm Pretty sure these cards were on there. Like, it's definitely like more than 20 years that these cards have been limited. Funnily enough, I think it was Genesis format in which some people have experimented with Exodia builds, and you could theoretically play multiple of the Exodia pieces. But it turns out the optimal way to play Exodia, even if you can play all of them at 3, is still to play all of them at 1. Because if you draw them in duplicates, they don't do anything for you. And most Exodia decks' game plan is to draw the entire deck anyways. And if you draw your entire deck, there's no reason to have multiple Exodia pieces in there. So these cards are limited essentially for fun. It wouldn't make a difference. It would not make a difference if these cards were at 3. If they wanted to declutter the limited list, they could just move them off tomorrow and nothing would change. Fine, I guess. X Ryziel is probably the most powerful Ryziel card just by nature of how well it plays into boards going second. And it is an absolutely insane card. However, it is also something that I have mixed feelings on this, because I constantly say that this is good design, where if a card is better going second because you get some bonus effects, I like that. You know, I do like when a card is usable going first, and X Ryziel was a starter, really good card going first, and it plays better into boards going second. I actually conceptually have no issue with X Ryziel. I thought X Ryziel was a pretty cool card. My main issue I had with Ryziel cards, personally, was that Ice Ryziel was the one that didn't have a lock into rank 4s. Like the fact that you could normal summon Ice, special summon Sword or X'd, and then you could still make like Fiendsmith combo out of those cards, I think was actually more problematic than X Ryziel and Ryziel Cross as well. This might be surprising. Even though it's the strongest Ryziel card, I don't think it was the most toxic Ryziel card. I think both Ice Ryziel and Ryziel Cross were more problematic than X Ryziel, and I would have also been happy if they hit those cards. But of course, I also at the same time am not the biggest fan of just rank 4 slop decks, which the Ryziel package unfortunately just fits into very, very well. So I'm not unhappy that it's limited either. On the surface, I think X Ryziel is just a solid starter that has more potential going second, so I don't really have an issue with it per se. But it was a very, very good card. Fairy Tale Snow is a very, very recent unlimit that came back to 1. I will say for this card, for the most part, and we are going to encounter a couple of these examples on the ban list as well, or on the limited section. This is one of those cards where I don't think it makes a big difference between having 1 or 3. Back in the day, when this card came out, which was 10 years ago at this point, in the Dark Illusion in 2016, people actually played 2 to 3 copies in decks. And the reason why you played 2 to 3 copies was because one of the main ways to access it was to mill it or to draw it. People actually wanted to draw it. People actually wanted to mill it. That's why you played multiple copies, especially in like 60 card, that grass looks greener piles. Nowadays, I feel like 1 copy of Snow is all that decks would play anyways, right? Like in the modern age of Yu-Gi-Oh, where everything searches everything and you access these cards, and Fairy Tale is now a big archetype that's actually meta relevant, which is also the reason why they brought this card back, I think. This card is searchable anyways. The Fairy Tale deck would not play more than 1 anyways, because you search it, it's not even a starter in the deck. You could even consider it a brick in the deck, and you're searching it or sending it to the graveyard from the deck directly. All you need is 1. So this is one of those cards where limited is essentially the same thing as unlimited. So the main question with Fairy Tale Snow is simply, should it be allowed or should it be banned? And if it should be allowed, then they might as well put it at 3 to declutter the ban list. I will say, so far in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, I have not had an issue with Fairy Tale Snow yet. I've encountered it a couple times. I've played against Fairy Tale, but even when I play against Fairy Tale Snow is not the thing that I find the most concerning. I think it's fine in the modern day and age as an interruption, as a engine requirement that you have to access. I think there are far more broken things in the game, and even in the Fairy Tale decks. I will say this is a little bit different if we were looking at this from the Master Duel lens. I think in Master Duel, this card has felt a little bit more problematic simply because Master Duel is a little bit more wacky with it, where you actually have some like Lightsworn FTK piles that have used this card before to like mill your entire deck, banish a bunch of cards, and then burn your opponent for every banished card with like the little arrow shark or whatever it's called. So there are ways to abuse this card still. So you need to be careful with this card, and there is always a chance that this card should be banned again at some point in the future. And in Master Duel right now, with how the ban list is structured, I actually would prefer if they got rid of it. But in the TCG, which is what we're talking right now, I don't have an issue with this card. So, and I guess that means that the problem in Master Duel is not necessarily Fairy Tail Snow, maybe more so something like Curious existing, because that is a very, very important aspect of that Tearlament Lightsworn pile, where you use Curious to access this card if you don't happen to mill the random copy of it. So I don't think Fairy Tail Snow is the problem in that case. K9 Jokul, similar to Noroi, who's banned, is just, I mean, very powerful card, but it's just one of those cards that's on this ban list because they just refuse to ban the card that needs to be banned, which is Ripper. Even though K9 is not a top tier meta strategy anymore at the moment, it could come back at any point. If there's ever a deck with good synergy with level 5 cards, we could see K9 come back at any moment, literally. As long as Ripper is there, you know, the deck always has the potential to become a problem again. Banning Noroi, limiting Jokul, and I think Case for K9. I guess we can talk about Case for K9 at the same time. I think that is also limited. Just slight consistency hits to a deck in which the boss monster that searches and negates hand traps is a generic rank 5. Every deck that can put 2 level 5s onto the field can still bridge into K9, no problem. Personally, I think just ban Ripper and all the other K9 cards can be free. It would be so much better. It would be so much easier. Everyone would be happy, is how I feel about this. Like, yeah, I'm not unhappy that they limited Case and Jokul, because when they hard draw Jokul, it's really, really broken. But there are other ways to search Jokul as well in the, what was the spell called? Chaotic Elements that can search it. Just get rid of the Ripper, and then my, like, look, if my opponent can combo with Jokul, as long as they don't negate any hand trap in the game, and do more searching with Ripper, I'm okay. Keldo the Sacred Protector and Mudora the Sword Oracle. This might be a hot take. I mean, obviously, these are leftovers from Ishizu Tearlament format, and are currently not seeing the most amount of play, even though they do pop up. They do pop up every once in a while when there's a deck that has, like, this cards for them, or mills a lot of cards, or whatever. Like, they do sometimes pop up. I think these cards are still very, very powerful. Now, of course, I have less of a problem with Mudora and Keldo than I did have it with Kelbeck and Agido. But unironically, these are cards that I would not mind if they just got rid of them. Because quick effect, shuffle 3 cards from the graveyard into the deck is very, very powerful. They are level 4 at that. They are great discards. They are great link material, great XYZ fodder, great synchro material. If there's ever a way... fusion material as well, there's a lot of potential with these cards, and they basically eliminate any graveyard centric strategy if you ever have consistent access to these. And especially with the Zena Link 5 that they made, which is also definitely a card that is going to be banned hopefully sooner rather than later. These are now also very accessible for any deck pretty much. Like, there's, in theory, any combo deck could, as long as you make the Zena, you could make your end board more layered by sending one of these guys from your deck to the graveyard. And then you are more, like, you're safer from board breakers because you have more interruption from the graveyard. Really powerful cards still. Wouldn't necessarily say they are a huge problem right now, but definitely limited for good reason. And if anything, I could see them go to the banned direction rather than off of the ban list. Like, I would not want these cards to ever really come off the ban list, I don't think. Unless the game fundamentally changes. Well, Dormouse and White Rabbit. Yeah, I mean, limited for good reason. Malice, obviously one of my less favorite decks of recent Yu-Gi-Oh history. Personally, and this is also something I've said a couple of times recently, at the moment, even though Malice still somewhat exists, I don't really have an issue with the Malice cards anymore. I genuinely think that the banning of White Binder, which we've talked about already, basically solved a lot of the problems from Malice. I think the main issue with Malice at the moment is its non-engine. I think Malice having access to basically the most powerful non-engine in the game, next to your classic Ash Blossom, Charmies, and whatever, they also have Dominus Impulse, Dominus Spark, and Dimension Shifter. I think if they want to hit Malice further, they should probably hit those cards rather than hit Malice harder. So I would actually not advocate. I mean, as funny as it would be if they banned Dormouse, I think it would be very funny, but I don't think it would be justified. That means a lot coming from me. Look, I hate playing against Malice still, but it's not because Dormouse is legal. It's because when I play against Malice, I get hit with Ash, Shifter, Spark, Impulse all the time. As long as Whitebinder stays banned, these cards are fine, in my opinion. And that's all I'll give you, Malice enjoyers, all right? We meet again, old friend. I mean, this is where it all started, I suppose. the cybers hate, the cybers memes. It's funny to me because I guess I need to give you some context for this, right? The original MathMech Circular hate, Josh hates MathMech Circular arc. The reason why that started, and it might look a little bit stupid from today's standpoint, is because MathMech Circular, in a way, yes, in a way, MathMech Circular was a pioneer for the whole one card combo playstyle and like play like 15 or 20 hand traps and just do one card combos, right? MathMech was one of the first decks that did that while also making a really powerful board at the same time, right? Like you could say like, oh, Marincess did the same thing. The difference was that Marincess didn't make a great board. They just had like an okay/bad board and a bunch of hand traps. MathMech was one of the first decks that did a lot of stuff, but then also had a lot of hand traps to back it up. So you would look at their board, you would think maybe it's breakable, but it's really hard. And then they would have Valor, Imperm, Ash in hand, and you would have no chance. And so this is something that at the time when it started happening, I didn't enjoy playing against it. And I called it out. And I said, you know, I don't like the direction that this is going. I don't think this one card combo stuff paired with 20 hand traps is healthy for the game. And that's why I complained about MathMech Circular. Fast forward a couple of years, I suppose me complaining about that kind of stuff did not do anything because they kept doing it. There was more and more decks that played one card combos, and nowadays it's completely normal that every format has a couple of decks that just work like this, right? Like there's a bunch of decks that are one card combos, make powerful boards, and play a bunch of hand traps, right? You look at Cool Tune at the moment, Yummy was like that in the previous format, and it looks like moving forward, it's not going to go away anytime soon. We have decks like Toon coming up, which is a very, very similar thing. So this is a completely normal concept. I didn't want this to happen, which is why I complained about it. But now that we are at this point, I don't think MathMech Circular still deserves the hate today. You know, I will say it, I will admit it, from a modern perspective, Circular is nothing to complain about anymore. I still stand by it. I think that these concepts are not the most fun. I don't like the direction that this has gone, personally. I think it's more enjoyable when decks play with more engine, when they have to combine cards, when, you know, I still don't think it's the best kind of gameplay. But if there's 10 other decks doing it, I'm not gonna complain about Circular anymore. He never did deserve the hate. First of all, you seem a little biased when your name is Circular was right. But also, I disagree. I think it was a fair thing to call out in 2022. I think in 2022, it was a reasonable opinion to be like, hey, I don't like this direction that Circular is going into. I would like if they didn't do this. Of course, the game changes over time. I think 4 years later, they did go a lot more into that direction. And now Circular is nothing special anymore, right? Circular is nothing out of the ordinary anymore. So I'm not going to complain about Circular any longer. And then we have Misk. Misk is an interesting card because it's pretty cringe, even though it's not very meta. The main issue with this card is that it does two things, right? On the one hand, it has a very cool effect to tutor out dinosaurs from your deck. On the other hand, it makes all of your shit unaffected. And that is an effect that I'm not a big fan of. And that was one of the reasons why this card was, I think it was banned at some point, right? It was banned. And I honestly didn't even mind it when they banned it. I think making all of your stuff unaffected is very problematic, especially as a quick effect in response to something. So this card very often ends up being like a Called by the Grave for dinosaur decks, where you normal summon your thing, your opponent tries to interact with it, you chain it and make it unaffected. I actually think that an effect like this shouldn't exist. Here's the thing, maybe you're a dinosaur fan and you want Misk to come back, but I will say, I think this card existing actually hurts dinosaur decks. Because as long as this card exists, they have to be very careful with making a good dinosaur deck again. I think if you are a dinosaur fan, you should actually want them to ban this card so they can start making good dinosaur decks again. Because as long as this card exists and is so highly searchable with cards like Oviraptor, Fossil Dig, and whatnot, they are not going to make really, really good dinosaur decks. If they got rid of this card, they could give you some really cool shit that wouldn't be so problematic. Sometimes there are cards that, as long as they exist, they have to design around them very, very carefully. And this is one of those cards. And you just can't really make good dinosaur decks because they're just going to make their stuff unaffected and everyone is going to complain about it. That's why I think this card shouldn't exist. Misk is at 3 in the OCG. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that dinosaur decks are too strong and that's why I want it to be hit. I just think this card existing actively stops them from making new, creative, good dinosaur decks. Just imagine that any of the recent meta decks had access to Misk, right? Like, just think of it as a card existing for other archetypes or other decks, right? Like, do you think they would have made, or it would be well received if there's a new deck coming out and it has access to Misk immediately? Like, it would be seen as very problematic and very bad for the game, right? Imagine Yummy had access to Misk. Imagine Yummy were dinosaurs, just for a thought experiment, right? Misk would have been insane in that deck, completely insane. And everyone would have complained about it because they go normal summon a Yummy, you try to interact with it, they chain Misk, and Misk is also an extender, right? Like that would have been absolutely insane and no one would have been happy about that. And so I think they should get rid of it. And that opens up a lot of design space for dinosaurs. They could even replace it. They could make like a weaker version of it that does something else, but still helps you tutor out stuff from the deck or whatever. Like, because I do understand this card is important to the strategy of dinosaurs because it tutors out like your Animadorned Archosaur or your babies or whatever, like, or your Oviraptor if you have enough fodder for it. Sure, you can replace that relatively easily without giving it the unaffected clause. It's not going anywhere when it got reprinted a week ago. I mean, it's not a prediction. This is a discussion of what should happen. I'm not saying it's going to get banned. I don't think it is. From a raw metagame perspective, they have no reason to ban it right now because no one is playing it. I'm just saying, I think for the future of card design, it would be better if they did. We already did it, Modora. Frame Gear Gamma. I don't know where you guys stand on Gamma, but I've experienced this card as a very polarizing card in my history of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Over the last couple of years. There are some people who are very, very big fans of this card. I personally despise Gamma. I hate Gamma to death for a couple of reasons. Number one, I hate the fact that it's so good and so bad at the same time. It's a very high variance card. And it's not only about Driver. It's not only about Driver being a thing, because yes, that is also something I hate. I hate the fact that you have to put Driver into your deck to play Gamma, which is just a random element of variance that I don't want. I'm not a fan of engine requirements in general, and Driver is probably the worst engine requirements in the history of the game because it's a level 6 vanilla. I hated something like Flamberge in Snake Eyes, but at least you could like discard Flamberge for Nightmare Phoenix and get its effect or something. Driver has like nothing going for it. The other thing I don't like about Gamma is that like it's technically meant to be better going second than going first, but it's just randomly really, really broken going first a lot of the times too in some decks or occasions. Like when your opponent starts with a spell and you ash it, or you Perulia in draw phase, or they activate a spell to search and you draw or whatever, and they just Gamma you on their own turn, and all of a sudden not only do they negate your hand trap like a Cult by the Grave, but they also get 2 bodies. I think it's insane when that happens. And so it feels like a very, very risky card to just exist, right? Because like it going first, it's so obnoxious. I have no issue with Gamma when you go second. Like the player going second should have access to a Gamma. Like I would love if they made a hand trap like this that only works going second, which is not the case with Gamma because very often you can use it going first. I hate almost everything about Gamma. Like I don't think Gamma should come back. I even hate the fact it's limited. I hate the fact that now people play 1 Gamma, 3 Delta or whatever, and still side frames are still a thing. I have much less of a problem with Delta actually. I think Delta is cool. Even though I hate the driver aspect, I hate. But Delta at least is only good going second. Not that I think it's interesting to just negate a spell. I still think it's not interesting, but I don't have a problem with it per se, right? I think Delta is fine. But Gamma is a problem, mainly because it can be used going first. That is one of the most concerning things about it, is when the player going first just negates a hand trap and then also gets 2 bodies. Like, that is definitely not okay. I do like the aspect of it going second, that it is a more powerful hand trap. Like, I do think the fact that it negates and destroys as a hand trap is a good answer to a lot of combo decks, because we talked about it earlier. We have a lot of cards in the game like Kapsiyami that provide multiple things upon normal summon. So getting rid of the effect and the body is actually very good going second. I just can't look past the driver and the uses when you're going first, because you might think this card is bad going first because you need to control no monsters, but the way it interacts with hand traps is just toxic. I just can't look past the ability to negate hand traps and get bodies on your first turn. That is just too bad for me, or too bad of a downside for me in terms of the balancing. So, not a fan of Gamma. I would have banned this card. I'm not gonna lie to you. I would have banned this card. I'm not complaining about it being at 1 because you barely see it, but I would have banned it. Substitute. This goes down as, for me personally, the worst trade deal in the history of trade deals. So what I mean by this is this card was banned for a very, very long time because it's not once per turn. So what, oh, of course, I mean, people know this. We've talked about it in the history of every single Yu-Gi-Oh format. Like, you could cycle through all of your frogs in the deck because you tribute one, summon the other, and so on and so forth. And that gives you infinite fodder for Ronin Totem. And then there was FTKs with that and all kinds of other things you could do with that. And so essentially what they decided was Substitute and Ronin Totem cannot exist together, which is fine. Fair enough. I could get behind that. And so while Ronin Totem was legal, Substitute was banned. And then eventually they decided, because sprites were playing 3 Swap Frog and a Ronin Totem, they decided the best way to hit the sprite deck was to ban Ronin Totem and give us back Substitute instead, because, well, now Substitute isn't the problem anymore because Ronin Totem isn't banned anymore. Because now you can still cycle through all of your frogs, but it doesn't do anything. Like, you just have a graveyard full of frogs now. Congratulations. And as a result, frogs have basically completely vanished from the game. Like, you can just no longer play frogs. And it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that they considered like Swap Frog and Ronin Totem too powerful. Because there's so many engines in the game that you can play, that you can like normal summon to create so much card advantage. Like, look at what one Radiant Typhoon Swen or Eldam does. And they're like, yeah, no, Swap Frog, send Ronin Totem, that's too much. I think that's crazy. And I think Substitute is, unfortunately, I'm sorry, a pretty useless card in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, especially without Ronin Totem. I'm not even sure if Substitute and Ronin Totem together would even cause a problem. Because who would build a deck with like 20 frogs? Like, that wouldn't even be good, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure in theory you could do that, but then you would die to any hand trap. Like, bro, you set up some Substitute lock. I mean, maybe I would for fun, but it wouldn't actually be competitive, I'm pretty sure. I don't think it would be competitive. Because what do you like? You put like 20 frogs in your deck. You're gonna like draw 3 to 4 frogs on average, and they all do nothing. And then you summon Substitute, it gets impermed, and you die. I don't know, man. Give us back Ronin Totem, you cowards. And if you need to, then take away the Substitute again. It's fine. We don't need it anyways. It doesn't do anything. But this was the worst trade deal in the history of trade deals for frog enjoyers. Please reverse. Please go back. Tearlaman's Havness, Tearlaman's Merle, Tearlaman's Sharon. These are difficult. These are difficult to evaluate because, of course, at the moment, Tearlaman's Kid Kalos is banned anyways. To be fair, even after Kid Kalos was banned, there was still ways to play Tearlaman's in the TCG. And I think, of course, these cards were limited because they were part of the best deck in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, period, right? Ishizu Tearlaman's, literally the most powerful Yu-Gi-Oh deck to this day. Even 3 years later, at this point, we do not have, I think, a deck that's even close to the power level of Ishizu Tearlamant. Having these cards limited, I think, is fine. I think it's fine. I think eventually they might decide to bring them back in a few years. I don't think we've reached that point yet because they are so splashable. and there are still so many good fusions to be made with them that I don't know. Do you think Vanquish Soul K9 full power is comparable? No, I don't think so. I don't think Vanquish Soul K9 is comparable to Ishizu tier. I think Ishizu tier eats it up. I mean, yes, Vanquish Soul K9, if it goes first uninterrupted and full combos, it would probably win. But there's a thing like you could just have a lot of like, you know, one halfness and all of a sudden you explode, potentially. The only comparable decks are Ryzeal and Malice. I think Ryzeal only has a chance in direct comparison because of Abyss Dweller. But I would not say Ryzeal is a more powerful deck in general. Like, it might have an okay matchup in 2 tier limits, but I don't think it can be considered a stronger deck overall. Full power Malice with Bystials, same thing. I think it has a solid matchup against it, but I wouldn't consider it a stronger deck. Yeah, but the good mill cards are banned. I mean, yes, I'm not talking about bringing back full power Ishizu tier. I'm just thinking, I feel like these cards are fine at limit. I think having these limited seems appropriate for how much potential they have, even outside of the Ishizu tier limit shell. I will say, if at some point they decide to bring like Havness back to 3 or all of them back to 2, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I wouldn't be like completely terrified. As long as Kekkolos stays banned, they could experiment with that and maybe it's okay. Maybe. I wouldn't hate it completely. I personally wouldn't risk it, I think, is how I feel about it. Did they ever ban a Tenpai card, or are they all limited? They're all limited. Nothing is banned for Tenpai. I think that's crazy. I think that's crazy. Sangan, Kaiman, Sangan Summoning, and Chandra. This card for sure should have been banned. I guess it depends where you stand on Tenpai. I've heard people say, and believe me or not, I think they were serious. I've heard people say Tenpai was healthy because it was finally a good going second deck. And I think they meant it. Which is crazy to me, because the way that Tenpai won going second was by hand trapping you to death or activating one board breaker and then activating one card that made everything unaffected and killing you and doing like 30,000 damage. Which, yes, it was a good going second deck, but it was still miserable. Like, miserable gameplay experience. One of the easiest top meta decks ever made, I think. I don't even know. Was there ever a deck that was easier to play in relation to its power level than Tenpai? I don't think so. And I never want this deck to ever exist again. Malice? No. Malice, as much as I would love to jump on the Malice hate bandwagon all the time, Malice was not that easy. Malice was too powerful, but Malice was at least something you had to exercise like some amount of skill, especially going second, when you were like playing through interruptions. This deck, you just activated a card that said your cards are unaffected, then you summoned a monster that said your opponent cannot activate anything during the battle phase, and then you did 30,000 damage to them. It was a completely toxic strategy, absolutely toxic strategy, just to make, on paper, just to make it sound like going second isn't a problem in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, oh, going first is balanced now because we have this deck that just auto wins going second. Cool. In my opinion, they went too easy on Tenpai with how toxic of a deck this was. I think a limit does not do it justice on these cards. The only thing that is stopping Tenpai from being meta is consistency. Think about that. Like, the only thing that is stopping us from experiencing another Tenpai meta is that the fact that they're inconsistent. And we have just gotten Pot of Sloth. Like, I would unironically not be surprised if people started playing a little bit of Tenpai at locals again because they can play Pot of Sloth now. Like, that could happen, genuinely. I just don't want to experience this deck ever again. Really not. Okay, this one is an interesting one. Vanquish Soul Holisu. Where do you guys stand on this one? Are you guys happy that this card is limited? I guess, how do people do this? One in chat if you're happy it's limited. Okay, I do see mostly ones. Not everyone. Not everyone is posting one, but most people are posting one. I can see it. I personally, I guess it's polarizing because it depends on what your opinion is about the turn 0 hand traps, or like the turn 0 engine plays, quote unquote. that they gave to a lot of decks. I personally was a fan of the concept, or am still a fan of the concept, you know, your Phimenas and such. But even if you're fine with the concept, I think there's an argument to be made that Vanquish Soul Holisu compared to other turn 0 plays was a little bit too powerful. Personally, I was very happy about this card until they made K9. And yes, Josh always finds a way to blame K9, and I will. But I loved Pure Vanquish Soul, and I loved the fact that it had Holisu. It made me feel like I was more resilient going second, and without having to just play regular hand traps, without having to just like, oh, you have a starter, let me just imperm it, right? Like I didn't want to play that sort of game, but I also didn't enjoy just losing when I went second. And so having Holisu in the deck felt really cool. And it didn't, before we got K9, it didn't feel like my deck was doing too much with a Holisu. It felt like, okay, well, Holisu, summon Raisin, search a card, turn that Raisin into a rock, add back the Raisin, and then pass. Once we got Ripper, once we got K9, Holisu ended up being not only a really good hand trap going second, but also a completely broken starter going first, right? Like you often didn't end up going rock pass. You went Holisu, summon Jiaolong, and made Ripper. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of questions about Holisu. It's like, are you happy with turn 0 plays? Do you like Vanquish Soul, or do you like K9? I think it's like some people think Vanquish Soul is an issue. Some people think K9 is the issue. So it's a polarizing one. Personally, and I guess this is not a surprise because we've talked about K9 already, I like this card. And I think if they banned Ripper, they could bring it back. Is how I feel like. I'm not mad if they don't bring it back, because I do understand if people think it's too powerful. I think that's fair enough. I just don't have an issue with powerful cards as long as what they do is interesting. And I think the things that Holisu does is interesting. I think accessing your engine, giving you some removal is an interesting way to approach going second. I think it's more interesting than just negating cards. And that's why I was fine with Holisu being a little bit more powerful than other cards. So I liked it in Pure Vanquish Soul. In Vanquish Soul K9, different story, and that's unfortunately the world we live in. Zodiac Ratpier. If we had done this video, this discussion, like 2 to 3 months ago, I would have probably said, they can bring back Ratpier. I don't care. But I have experienced the absolute horrors that this card is causing in Master Duel right now, because Master Duel has brought this card back to 3 alongside unbanning Broad Bull, and it's absolutely miserable. So just for context, you might think, because this is also what I tend to do sometimes when I think about these things, I'm a little bit too naive with it sometimes, because I'm thinking about it in the context of Pure Zodiac. Would Pure Zodiac be a problem with Broad Bull and Triple Ratpier? No, absolutely not. It's actually kind of cool. I've played against some Pure Zodiacs in Master Duel. It's a pretty fun deck to play against. It's completely fine. The problem is that in reality, in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, people aren't playing Pure Zodiac. They are finding the most broken ways to abuse these cards in other decks because there are no locks attached to them at any point. And so what people are doing with this in the Master Duel right now is they go normal summon Ratpier, overlay into a rank 4, detach, summon another Ratpier, make a rank 4 on top of that, summon another Ratpier, make a rank 4 on top of that, overlay 2 of them into the F0 that makes Utopic Draco Future, so you have a monster negation before you even search, so you cannot get hit with Droll and Lockbird, and then you make Broad Bull and you search a Radiant Typhoon starter and you go from there, and so you have from one Ratpier or Barrage or Tenki, you have a hand trap, a monster negate on the field, a Trident, and full Radiant Typhoon combo. Completely absurd. Now, this could be considered Broad Bull's fault. Oh yeah, they can also go Saryuja. This could be considered Broad Bull's fault, which I think is fair enough. I think even if they ever decide to bring back Ratpier, I guess I can live with it. But they should never bring back Broad Bull. At the same time, I still don't think adding back Ratpier into the game right now, I don't think it offers much. I don't think it offers much because the reality is people are not going to play Pure Zoo. Even without Broad Bull, that is still like a lot of stuff that you can do. You still get a monster negate before you do anything. and you just get a lot of bodies that people are going to convert into something crazy. Like you get free rank 4s, you get Utopic Draco Future, and a whole bunch of other things. I don't think it's worth bringing back Ratpier and risk that happening. I don't think it's worth it. Yeah, keep this thing where it is, and especially keep Broadbull where it is. I don't want that to happen. And that's all the effect monsters. Now we move into the extra deck, which the extra deck section on the limited is a very interesting place, because most of these cards genuinely don't matter, is the interesting thing. Fiendsmith Lacrima has no business being at 1. No one plays more than 1. It doesn't make sense. Why is it here? It's here since like a long time. The thing is, they banned this card very quickly because it was very, very toxic how it interacted with the Yu-Gi-Oh! Time rules. When they changed the Yu-Gi-Oh! Time rules, they brought it back. And typically what they do, which I guess it makes some sense, but typically when they decide to bring a card off of the ban list, they don't put it to 3 immediately. They put it to 1, which is supposed to be like a safety measure of like, we bring the card off the ban list, we want to see what kind of impact it has first before we bring it back to 2 or to 3. In some cases, this makes sense. In some cases, it doesn't. And this is one of those cases where it just doesn't make sense. This card has... I don't think I've ever seen a Fiendsmith deck, even after this card released and it was at 3. I've never seen a deck that played more than 1. It was just the whole Fiendsmith engine is about recycling, shuffling back, and everything. You never played more than 1. This card does not need to be limited. So bring it back to 3, I guess. I mean, at the same time, it doesn't hurt anyone that it's here. So it's I'm not really, it's not like a complaint. It doesn't matter. But like, I mean, you could just declutter the ban list by bringing it back to 3, and it would just save you some space on the ban list, I guess. All right, Gem Knight Master Diamond. This is one that actually I think does make sense because it's a non-once per turn way to copy your graveyard effects. I do believe this is in order to prevent the Gem Knight deck from FTKing. So this is one where it actually makes sense. This is an extra deck monster that you actually would summon multiple of in a classic Gem Knight FTK. And I think if they brought this back to 2 or 3, then I think that would be more possible again. Even though, of course, some of the recent Gem Knight support actually has like effect text on it that says you do like half damage or something to prevent people from FTKing. But you could just not play those cards, I guess, and still FTK with the old cards and the old builds. So this is a card that deserves to be at 1. And as long as the FTK isn't possible, they also don't need to ban this, right? Because I think Gem Knight plays this at 1 because it does have other uses. It does have other uses in the Gem Knight deck, and they do sometimes still play it. So it's fine to be at 1. It doesn't need to be banned. But if the FTK becomes possible as soon as you have 2, then it cannot go back to 2. Simple as that. Phantom of Yubel is another one that makes sense. This card, I mean, absolutely. Here's the thing. Limiting this card is essentially just a bug fix. Because this card should have always been a once per turn summon. They should have never been able to make multiple of these in the first turn. So it's an absolutely necessary limit in my opinion. Once again, Yubel is not currently a top tier meta deck, but it was like, I know there's people out there who enjoyed the deck, but come on, man, that deck was so miserable to play against in 2024. This deck was more miserable than Snake Eyes, by the way. I'll say it, and I will stand by it. This deck was more toxic than Snake Eyes by a landslide because it did so many more problematic things. It summoned hand trap negations even before it would combo in Phantom of Yubel, and the end board was even more auto win than the Snake Eyes end board. It was absolutely more toxic than Snake Eyes. There is not even a debate about it. And the crazy thing is, it wasn't even necessarily just Yubel's fault. It was very much the fault of some other cards in the game, like the Fiendsmith engine being accessible through Moon in it was a problem. Varudras was a massive problem in it. The Yubel Appaloosa was also still a thing. It had access to a lot of very problematic cards. And if they banned Varudras, then maybe I'd be okay with bringing Yubel back. Like with less access to Fiendsmith and with Nova Rudras, maybe I'd be okay with it. But with how like the Unchained cards were thrown into the mix as well, like the whole Fiend Yubel slop, it was a massive problem in 2024. One of my least favorite decks of all time to play against. I don't want this card to come back. I think 1 is a perfectly fair spot for this card to be. I mean, the ideal spot for this card would have been to never been printed, but they should have never made it so you can summon multiple of this in the same turn. So having it at 1 makes sense. So yeah, and I will not discuss with anyone who defends the Yubel deck. Like the Yubel deck was one of the worst designed decks in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, and I will not accept. Like, look, come on, man. That deck ended on more like negates and whatever than people had cards in hand. Linkaribo. This is another entry in cards that came off of the ban list to 1 and have no business being at 1. No one would play. I don't think anyone would play multiple Linkaribos. Maybe Yummy would, I guess, but not really in a bad way. I mean, the weird thing about Linkaribo is that if you have 1 Linkaribo, you have 2 Linkaribos because it comes back from the graveyard by tributing a level 1 monster. So it's kind of like at 2 anyways, even if it's at 1. And I mean, how do you guys feel about Linkaribo? Because when they banned it, it felt like a relatively weird ban to address Snake Eye without actually addressing Snake Eye. At the same time, I didn't really miss it. I didn't really miss Linkaribo because it feels like, I mean, Link ones in general are very, very dangerous because they often create a lot of crazy combo opportunities. I don't hate Linkaribo either, though. There's Almirage. I think Almirage, like that's the thing, right? I think banning Linkaribo is not that effective because there's other cards that have similar roles, like Relinquished Anima or Almirage. You know, the fact that it can dodge targeting and stop your opponent from attacking over your stuff does make your end boards better and harder to interact with. So I do think this is one of the best utility Link ones for generic purposes. But I think banning Linkaribo would be kind of inconsequential if you don't also hit some of the other Link ones. So I think Linkaribo is fine, but I do think it doesn't need to be limited. Like if you think that Linkaribo is fine to exist, I think it can be at 3. It doesn't need to be at 1. I think no one would play multiples in most cases. Striker Dragon is, I think, just a leftover. Like I don't know why this card is still on the ban list, honestly. Like Dragon Link is, I think, fine with 1 copy of it. This is just like a leftover limit from, I mean, Dragon Link did win the World Championship 3 years ago. They would like 2 copies in Dragon Link, probably. They can get away with 1, but they would like a second one, probably. I don't know why Pisty LP are limited and banned. Okay, well, hold up. Okay, calm down. Strike Your Dragon. I will accept the argument that like Striker Dragon could come back. And I could also accept the argument that is Pisty limited? No, Pisty isn't limited. Because Pisty is not banned, is it? No, Pisty is not banned. I was about to say Pisty does not need to be limited because you only play 1 Pisty anyways. So I think Striker Dragon, I wouldn't be against unlimiting Striker Dragon. I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't hate it. LP, on the other hand, LP and Agarpain absolutely stay banned forever. Okay, we've talked about this. This is the limited card discussion. We've talked about the banned cards already. LP is one of the least unbannable cards on that list. Those are 2 completely separate discussions. The Striker Dragon, I think, could come back to 2 or 3. I wouldn't hate it. Especially since they made Rocket support and the deck didn't really do anything. And as long as they keep Savage Dragon banned, I think I'd be okay with giving them back Striker Dragons. Summon Sorceress. This card was unbanned only because they gave it an errata. This card now reads, if it's Link summoned, you can special a monster from your hand in defense position to your opponent's zone this card points to, but negate its effects. Then you can special a monster from your deck in defense position with the same type as that monster but negate its effects. If you summon from your deck in this way, you cannot special summon for the rest of this turn except monsters with that same original type. You can only use this effect summon sources once per turn. A few things about this. Number one, similar to a lot of the other cards from the extra deck we've looked at so far, there is no difference between 1 summon sorceress and 3 summon sorceress. So if it's limited, it might as well be unlimited. The other thing is that I think this was one of those cards where they chose to errata it to bring it back. And I don't think that was worth it, because the problem here is that they didn't really create a good and healthy card. They just created a card that has very niche but rather toxic use cases, because it just tutors out any monster from the deck in the right setup. And guess what happens in modern Yu-Gi-Oh if you can tutor out any monster from the deck with the right setup? Well, people find ways to abuse that, and people do things like summoning Jolin Lockbird and then adding it back to your hand somehow or whatever. There's a lot of weird things you can still do with Summon Sorceress, and it's almost never healthy. So realistically, I don't think they're gonna ban it, because that sort of stuff is not very popular at the moment. But I just want to say, I don't think it was worth it. I don't think it was worth bringing this back to enable those things again, when Yu-Gi-Oh already has a problem with, like, look, we have enough generic combo enablers already that I want them to get rid of. So errataing Summon Sorceress just to bring it back in a slightly less problematic form, but still problematic, wasn't worth it. Personally, for me, I wish they didn't do it. I wish they didn't do that. Sun Avalon Dryas and Sun Avalon Healer. I don't even know if the fact that these are limited matters anymore for Sun Avalon, but it just makes me happy that they're here. I just think it's funny. It does. Oh, it does matter. It matters. Oh, that's good then. Yeah, I'm happy about that. That makes that just made my day. Thank you for telling me that this still hurts. I'm happy it still hurts. That's good. That's good. Yummy Snatchy. Yummy Snatchy is one of my favorite limits we've looked at so far, because, and I guess this is a discussion that we didn't even have yet, but limiting and semi-limiting is an interesting topic in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I very often am of the opinion that a card is either okay or not okay. And so in a lot of cases, I don't agree when they limit or semi-limit cards that I find problematic, because I feel like they should ban them if they're problematic, and if they're not problematic, then you should put them at 3. And very often, I'm especially not a big fan if the limit or semi-limit is just a consistency hit, where it's like, oh well, you now get to sometimes normal summon Dormouse, but just not as often anymore. But if you summon Dormouse, then you still get to do the full thing, which is why the White Binder ban in that example is the most important thing to me. I don't necessarily care if Dormouse is at 1 or 2 or 3. I want him to limit how much you can do with a Dormouse, and then it's okay. Snatchy is one of those examples where limiting it actually has meaningful impact, right? This is not a consistency hit. This actually changes how the deck plays, how the deck limits, how the deck manages its resources, and it limits the amount of grind game that the deck has, which is meaningful, right? Because the deck would very often start by making a Snatchy, then turn that into a Synchro, and then make another Snatchy to end on. If Snatchy is limited, you have to change how you combo. It doesn't change the consistency of your Yummy deck, it changes the ceiling. It lowers the power level of the deck, and not the consistency. Those are my favorite types of hits. This is why the Yummy Snatchy limit, and also, for example, the Arclight ban, those are the things that I really wanted for Yummy, because it doesn't change the deck's identity or consistency, it just changes the ceiling and the power level. And I think those are the best limits. So Snatchy, in my opinion, was a phenomenal limit, and I'm happy it's here. And honestly, if Yummy wasn't so bridgeable, if Yummy wasn't so easy to go into with other engines, I would even say limit Snatchy, ban Arclight, and they can have back all the other Yummy cards. I don't care. I don't have an issue with a pure Yummy deck that has 1 Snatchy and no Arclight. They could have Cupsy at 3. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind this at all. So I think this is a very good limit All right, we talked about the Exodia pieces. Astrograph Sorcerer. I mean, you guys know I'm a Pendulum hater, but I genuinely don't know if there's a big difference between 1 and 3. Because this card, I mean, it's a Pendulum card, so in a Pendulum combo deck, it's very highly searchable anyways, and a lot of the Pendulum decks that I see, they can search it relatively easily. So if they want it to be allowed, I guess it could be at 3, right? I'm just trying to put my Pendulum hate aside. Like, I feel like they could put it to 3. As long as they don't bring back Electromite. And if they brought back Electromite, this card probably should be banned, but that's a different discussion. I'm just talking right now, no Electromite in the format. Does it actually matter if this card is at 1 or at 3? So, I don't know. It is not once per turn, right? Which is crazy for a card that came out when? 2017? That's insane. Electromite is only played for slop pseudo FTK stuff. I mean, that's just Pendulum. That's the thing, right? Like, yes, I don't like Pendulum because every Pendulum combo deck that I'm seeing is like a pseudo FTK. So I'm not a fan of it. But like, I guess it's a playstyle that exists. I don't know. Eniacraft could never. Okay, Eniacraft is the one exception. I mean, I actually, and this is the weird thing for me. I actually does like I actually do like Pendulum when it's used in that way. When they make a unique Pendulum deck that is limited to its own strategy, like when they do like the Melodious scales or Eniacraft or Nemlaria or whatever. I mean, not all of it is meta relevant, but when they make a unique Pendulum strategy that is not useful for like Velmonica, that is not useful for Pendulum slop, I'm a big fan of it. I like the double use of Pendulum cards. Like I like that they can be spells. I like that they can be monsters. I think it's very interesting. Unfortunately, a lot of it isn't that. So yeah, I'm not a fan of Astrograph Sorcerer, but I don't know if it would make a difference if it went back to 3. I hope it wouldn't. Okay. Habakiri. This is probably what is you think Habakiri is the most memed card of the last year? Probably, right? I don't think this was a good limit. I'll say it. I don't think limiting Habakiri was the way to go. And I think they have maneuvered themselves into a little bit of a weird situation right now. Because the issue with limiting Habakiri is that it's I mean, first of all, it's once per duel anyways, and it's highly searchable. So as long as you can search your one of Habakiri, this does not make a difference to how this deck plays, pretty much. And there are a ton of searchers, and they keep making more. They keep making more ritual support cards. We just got the Ragged Records of Rights in Chaos Origins that just searches Habakiri. We get in Magnificent Monsters, we get the Cyber's Link 2 that can just search Habakiri. So limiting Habakiri doesn't really do anything to the viability of Mitsurugi. And Mitsurugi has been a very, very popular deck ever since it's been made. It's still, even like, it came out over a year ago in Alliance Insight, and it's still got second place at the European Championship and qualified for Worlds. Which, by the way, that deck I actually don't have an issue with. I think the fact that Pure Mitsu got second at Euros is not something to complain about. I think that's cool. The problem is that there's a couple of other things on the horizon, like the one of the main things they did to make Habakiri or make Mitsurugi more bearable for me personally was that they removed some bridges, right? They got rid of Arclight, they got rid of King of the Fair Limbs. That was big, because that meant that we had less Mitsurugi hybrids and more pure Mitsurugi, which I think is good. And you will never catch me really complaining about pure Mitsurugi. I think that deck is fine. The problem is, like I said earlier, there is a Link 2 coming up that searches Habakiri, which is going to probably bring back Mitsurugi hybrids. So the limit of Habakiri when they got rid of all the bridges, and now there's just more and more bridges and ways to search Habakiri coming out, I think it looks kind of weird in hindsight. I think Master Duel and the OCG have shown that limiting prayers is a more effective way of actually hitting Mitsurugi. My issue is I don't actually want them to kill Mitsurugi for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think pure Mitsurugi is fine. Number two, I think the fact that the legendary modern decks exist is very, very good for the game because Mitsurugi is at the moment one of the cheapest entry-level decks to Yu-Gi-Oh! That is affordable. And I think that's good. I think that is good for the game. I don't think you want to kill that deck. And I mean, it's not even overly powerful. It's just okay. It's like a tier 2 solid mid-range pure Mitsurugi deck. It's okay. They should find other ways to hit it though, because I mean, as soon as the bridges come out, the combo decks are gonna come back, and I don't want that to happen. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. Maybe getting rid of the trap card, but yeah. I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. I don't think they're going to ban Habakiri, and I wouldn't want them to ban Habakiri. Like I said, I don't want the deck to completely vanish. But they do need to find a solution for... I mean, I guess they could burn another bridge. I guess they could get rid of the Link 2 as soon as possible, but that is a Grandmaster Rare overframe. I don't think they want to ban it, so... Maybe another Mitsurugi hit is about to happen at some point. Oh my... I mean, on the one hand, right? On the one hand, we've just looked at a couple of other cards that also it doesn't matter if they're limited or not. But this one somehow is the funniest one to me by far. Because, like, with cards like Fiendsmith's Lacrima or Linkuriboh or Summon Sorceress, they all have one thing in common. And that is that they were banned and they just brought them back to 1. Which at least makes some sense, right? Like, slowly get them off the ban list. This one is so funny to me. It's funny and concerning at the same time because it made so little sense. This card was never, and I repeat, never played at more than 1 copy. It was a staple one of every single Yami extra deck that I've seen was on 1 Yami way, 1 Cookie way, and 1 what's the other one called? Lollipoe. So it was never being played at more than 1, and putting this to 1 was the most nothing burger of a hit, which was very, very weird. And so I mean, I still remember that I was not very happy with that ban list. So that was one of the reasons, because I felt like they put a lot of things on it that they were like changing things that didn't really change anything. So this did not make sense. They should revert this as soon as possible. It's a little embarrassing that this is at 1. Every time I look at the ban list, I'm like, oh my god, yes, this happened. They should remove the evidence of that happening as soon as possible and put it back to 3. So I have to stop seeing it every time I look at the ban list. Okay. This card is, believe it or not, one of my top contenders for cards that should be banned soon. I think we are getting to a point in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, or essentially in the way Yu-Gi-Oh is being played, where hand rips are just no longer acceptable, because combo decks going first are getting better and better at playing through hand traps, and you have to rely on a combination of hand traps and board breakers, or just board breakers, more and more. And this card is not okay at 1, because it's like just way too accessible, because a lot of the combo decks at the moment also happen to be synchro decks, as well as it is loopable because it's not hard ones per turn. So there have been combos where you would like bring it back from the banished pile with this pattern, and it's a double hand loop, and it's just not okay, man. Like if you don't open a hand trap against combo decks, you're already kind of screwed. The fact that they take 1 or 2 or even 3 cards out of your hand sometimes is just not okay. So this is one of the easiest bans to do, because it doesn't actually impact the functionality of a lot of decks. Like, a lot of combo decks are still really strong without hand ripping, but Omega is just not okay. It's absolutely not okay. Hyper Librarian. Hyper Librarian is somewhat concerning, but also kind of okay. I don't know exactly why it's limited, because I feel like if synchro combo decks get to one librarian, it's probably like the first librarian does like 99% of the work. Because like, yes, there were formats where like this, and we're talking like 14 years ago, where people were trying to summon 2 librarians and then draw a bunch of cards. Don't know if this would realistically happen, but this one I would be okay with just leaving it at 1 just for safety measures, right? Like, yes, this card was limited about 15 years ago, and I don't know if it would matter if they put it to 3. But realistically, this is one of those cards where, I mean, yeah, they can draw their entire deck. So it is a little bit risky to put it to 2 or 3. So probably just better leave it at 1. There's nothing to gain from unlimiting it, this one, right? It's just an unnecessary risk, I guess. Daigusto Emerald is one of those cards, I think, on the ban list that you look at from a modern perspective and you're like, damn, I never see this card seeing play. I wonder why it's even on here, because it doesn't seem that good. And it's true, this is not that good of a card. It's just a generic rank 4 that recycles 3 cards from your grave and then draws a card. The reason this card is limited is because it enables infinite loops if it's at 2, because it's not hard ones per turn. So if you can summon 1 Emerald, it goes to grave, and you can always summon a second Emerald to recycle the first Emerald and then rinse and repeat, which is something that no normal Yu-Gi-Oh deck does. But it did back in the day create some opportunities for infinite combos and infinite loops and FTKs, which I guess having it at limited is just a safety measure so that doesn't happen, which I'm okay with. Like, similar to Hyper Librarian, there isn't much to gain from removing this card from the ban list. It's just an unnecessary risk, because like, no one even plays the 1 copy, and no one would play 2 anyways. Like, there's no, like, I mean, it doesn't really give us anything if they put this to 2 or 3, other than maybe enabling a random FTK deck, which is like, why would we do that? So this card is okay at limited, even though it doesn't see much play. But it definitely doesn't need to be banned. I mean, it's not good enough for that. The 2 gimmick puppets. Gimmick puppet just confuses me, personally. Because, I mean, this is now, once again, Ankh telling stories from way back in the day. But there used to be a time where they went very aggressively after FTKs, and they would preemptively ban FTKs that existed, because FTKs were looked upon as something that was very, very unhealthy and very, very bad for the game. So it was something that we just didn't want it in the game. And the ban list designers agreed, and they got rid of the FTKs. Even preemptively, even if they weren't even good. Like, the FTK decks back in the day didn't even have to be popular for them to hit them. And then they made Gimmick Puppet a deck that was, I mean, they made Gimmick Puppet a long time ago, but then they made the Gimmick Puppet Legacy support recently that just gave the deck the identity of an FTK deck. Like, that deck was made to FTK, which is so, like, one of the most confusing design decisions to me ever. In a 2-player game, I mean, I understand that FTKs can happen if the community is creative and combines cards in a game without rotation. Like, I get it. It's not desirable, but it can happen. And then they deal with it on a ban list, fine. The idea to even make a deck that is designed to be an FTK in a 2-player card game is mind-blowing to me. And these 2 cards being on the ban list is just like a leftover thing from this period of time of card design in I think it was 2024 that not that these cards came out, but like the FTK actually came to exist. It's so confusing to me. It is so confusing to me that they ever made these. And every time I look at the limited section and I see these guys, it just reminds me of that confusion that I felt. And it's just like, I don't know. Same set as Tenpai? Yeah, I mean, it checks out. 2024 Yu-Gi-Oh! is a real mystery to me as to like why they designed the archetypes in that way. I don't get it. But yes, obviously these cards should never come off the ban list, because the Gimmick Puppet deck should have never existed in this form. It is the dark times of Yu-Gi-Oh! Card design, yes. And then there's Ryzeal Detonator on here, limited. Is this Is this still necessary? Because I feel like Ryziel Detonator limit is like the result of the first wave of Ryziel hits, right? This is what they did. This is what they did when they wanted to hit Ryziel a little bit, but they didn't want to hit it too hard yet. And then they later on hit Ryziel properly, right? And so I feel like there isn't really a difference nowadays between one detonator and multiple detonators. I mean, the thing is though, like in the TCG, we still have Ryziel Cross, which is funny. It's one of the few things that the Master Duel has actually done. Like the Master Duel ban list is like very, very bad in comparison to TCG and OCG ban lists. But the one thing they did was banning Ryziel Cross. The funny thing is, here's my funny theory on this. The reason why Master Duel has made a correct decision on a ban list is actually not because they thought it was the best hit, but probably because Ryziel Cross was like the lowest rarity card in the archetype and they didn't want to give you super rare crafting points or ultra rare crafting points. Like the reason why they made a good decision was probably for the wrong reason, is what I think. I don't think it was because, oh yeah, Ryziel Cross is toxic because it negates hand traps. It was probably just because it was not a super rare or higher, which is funny and sad to think about at the same time. But yeah. Like I said earlier, I don't really have a massive issue with Ryziel Detonator, especially because having one is basically the same as having 2 or 3. I think, funnily enough, if they got rid of Ryziel Cross, I think I would be okay with giving more Ryziel cards back. But yeah, it's fine. We've talked about Case for K9 already. Bonfire, I guess we can talk about Bonfire and the other, like, one of consistency cards at the same time. Like, where's Reinforcement of the Army? Reinforcement of the Army is here. Cards like these are interesting to me because, once again, I'm not a fan of just consistency hits, and technically that's what these are. And I think there's a lot of, I mean, you say if Rhoda is at 1, Bonfire needs to be at 1. Yes, that's fair. It's kind of the same treatment for both of these cards. At the same time, there are other searchers that are not at 1, like Fossil Dig, for example. Like some types just have those cards, some don't have those cards, some have them at 1, some have them at 3. And I mean, there's been times where Reinforcement of the Army was at 3, and I don't really think it was a problem. My issue is that I think the problem is usually what you can do with the cards that you search, not the searcher itself. I think consistency is never really the problem. I think the problem is what those cards do. Like, I don't have a problem with my opponent going Bonfire for Ice Ryziel if there is no Ryziel Cross, for example. Or I don't have a problem with my opponent going Reinforcement of the Army for Vanquish Soul Raisin if it's pure Vanquish Soul, right? At least that's how I feel about it. However, you are making a good point. There is a reason you can only use 3 of a card in your deck and not 6. At the same time, in Modern Yu-Gi-Oh, I think that reasoning is flawed because, look, Modern Yu-Gi-Oh, any card searches any card. Like, this is not appropriate anymore. And I think this is another thing that bothers me with these cards. It doesn't really have anything to do with the balancing aspect of it, but I just felt like back in my day, these cards started out as interesting decision points where you would often have like a toolbox of warriors in your deck and you would pick which one you wanted in any given situation. And I think they have kind of devolved into something different where, like, usually, or like, let's say 90% of the time, you are just using these cards as extra copies of the same card every time, right? You are just using it as Raisin number 4. Or, like, I mean, Bonfire in Ryziel, you actually had 2 choices. And this already feels exceptional because you were deciding between, do I pick Ice Ryziel or do I pick X Ryziel? And in Snake Eyes, it's like, do I pick Snake Eye Ash or do I pick Poplar? That's like the extent of decisions that you make with these cards. And I think that's kind of sad that you don't have those kind of like toolboxes anymore. But I guess that is just the nature of Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! But yeah, I don't really have that big of an issue with these cards because once again, consistency I think is not a bad thing. At the same time, I'm also not bothered by them being at 1. It's not the kind of thing, like sometimes I look at, you know, Dimension Shifter being at 1 and I just scratch my head and I'm like, I don't know why this is okay at 1. With Rhoda and Bonfire and something of the sorts, I don't have the same issue. I think it's okay. Like if they decide for these to be at 1, I'm okay with it. If they ever decide that consistency is a good thing and they put them to 2 or 3, I think that's also fine. I do think that Genesis format is an interesting thing to look at here because in Genesis format, a lot of people are actually arguing that the searchers should have less points because they can help a lot of rogue decks as well. Whereas the actual decks that can do a lot with them, those cards should be pointed heavier so that, like, let's say you're playing a rogue warrior deck, you have 3 Rhodas. But if you're playing a meta warrior deck, you can still play Rhoda, but the points are on your engine and not on the Rhoda. So yeah, Rhoda not being once per turn is a weird one. You guys are overvaluing once per turn on normal spell cards. Like on generic non-loopable non-engine or engine like spells, once per turn is not a good thing. Like hard once per turn or once per turn should be on cards that are abusable, that are loopable, that are from the extra deck. Those cards should have once per turns like almost all the time, but regular spells shouldn't. Like a regular spell, it should not be a random point of variance that you just drew 2 of the same card and you can't use them. That is not something, that's not valuable. That's not good game design. Not every single card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Needs to be once per turn. Okay. Branded Fusion. Branded Fusion was a limit that I think I predicted it on my latest ban list discussion because it's not that meaningful and I didn't think they would want to hit branded in a meaningful way. Funnily enough, I think this is completely fine. I think this is an okay card to have limited, but at the same time, the modern branded deck doesn't even care. So in that way, it could be looked at a bad limit because why did we limit a card that the deck doesn't even care about that much, right? Like I think modern branded is usually just searching the one of Branded Fusion for the follow-up turn anyways, and they are completely fine with that. So I don't know, it's weird. I guess the whole topic of branded is I mean, how they're gonna hit branded is an interesting question, I think. Like that is something that I'm very, very interested to see how they're gonna hit branded on the next ban list. Because limiting brand, I mean, the thing is, before White Albaz, I would have definitely said, yes, limiting branded fusion is good and sufficient and a fair hit to branded. Right now, it seems a little weird because the deck isn't even that focused on branded fusion anymore. Ice Spirits, maybe. You know, Ice Spirits is just, once again, mainly a consistency hit, so I'm not the biggest fan of just doing High Spirits to 1 and calling it a day. I feel like if you want to actually balance the deck properly, I think you need to do something different. But I could see them doing High Spirits. But that's not, it's not a banless discussion in terms of what they should do. I just think Branded Fusion probably should stay here, just for good measure. I don't think it deserves to be banned. It's not important enough at the moment. I don't think it should be semi-limited or unlimited though, because it still is Branded Fusion. It's a very powerful card. And the deck, if they hit the synchro portion of the deck could always lean back into the fusion direction. Like, that is still good. So, yeah. Brilliant Fusion. Brilliant Fusion is a scary card that, I mean, at the moment at least, with it being limited, the cool thing about this is that it at least is used in its intended deck, right? It's only used in Gem Knights. And I think that's cool. I don't even know if, realistically, if they brought this card back to 3, do you think people would start playing Brilliant Fusion with Garnet again to, like, send any light? They probably would. They probably would. Some people definitely would. So, yeah, probably keep Brilliant Fusion limited. Just because Gem Knights can have it. They can search it. That's okay. They are allowed to have it. I'm fine with it. I don't want the generic Brilliant Fusion, send any light from deck, get a second normal summon. I don't want that to become a thing again, right? This is, and it's not even close, the card on the limited list that I would ban first. We've talked about cards I would ban, and we're gonna have other cards on here that I would ban later. But even Omega or Shifter, if I could pick one card to ban from the limited section, I would not even have to think for a second. I would snap say Called by the Grave. Snap. Insta. No second thought, no looking back. This is the most bannable card in the limited section, and it's not close. While, look, I don't like the mention Shifter, but I can see people making some arguments like, oh, it helps rogue decks, it helps the player going second. I don't think those arguments, like, outweigh the negatives for me, but I can see those arguments. For Called by the Grave, there is zero argument. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a massive problem with going first being too strong. Called by the Grave, giving the going first player just a negate for insulating the combo, protecting their combo from hand traps. The one interaction that the player going second can have is discarding a hand trap. And even if your opponent doesn't have a hand trap, well, congratulations. Now you've made your full board because there was no hand trap, and you have a Called by the Grave face down, which in most cases against most modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks is also just a straight up negation for one of their plays. This card has no business being in the game. Zero business being in the game. Yeah, the most toxic card in the limited section by a landslide. And probably only followed by Crossout Designator, but Crossout Designator is like less problematic because at least you need to play the same card in your deck. But I mean, I guess we can do both of these together. Like, I would snap ban Called by the Grave. It would be my first pick. Crossout Designator is less broken than Called by. Unless you're playing a mirror match, then it could be considered even better. But in most cases, there's one thing that Crossout Designator does differently than Called by the Grave. In a lot of cases, when your opponent doesn't have a hand trap, Crossout Designator most of the time actually isn't a disruption, right? Like when you set Crossout Designator and you're not playing a mirror match, usually you won't be able to use it. Like there's been plenty of games where I played against the face down card and they didn't activate it the entire game, and then at the end I found out, oh, it was Crossout Designator that was just dead. That does not happen with Called by, right? So this is just a worse because more situational Called by the Grave, which is still hella toxic. I would still ban it if I could. If I could make these decisions, I would ban it in a heartbeat. But it's not close to Called by the Grave. It has some advantages, like it can stop Nib, it can stop Imperm, it can stop Dominus cards if you play them. It's not strictly worse than Called by, but it is overall worse than Called by. Because it's just a worse defensive card when you set it behind your board. But still, Called by and Crossout. I mean, Called by is top 1 most bannable cards on the limited list. I think Crossout is like top 5. I'm not sure if I would ban Crossout before I would ban Shifter or Omega, for example. But yeah, Called by absolutely has to go. And the OCG already banned it. I think it's only a matter of time until the TCG does too. Yeah. Card Destruction is just one of those wacky one-ofs that no one really plays. And nowadays, I don't really have an issue with it being at 1. I don't know if it would cause problems if it's at 3, because it is not once per turn. And if you can consistently draw it as a 3-of, maybe it would cause some problems. But I think it's a very classic one-of, and it's one of those, like, I just don't really mind it. I don't really mind it. I mean, only very wacky decks play it, like Danger, Dark World or something. I mean, those decks can be pretty toxic. At the same time, like in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, I think it's just, you do have to admit that this card has some pretty major downsides to it as well, which is like, you do give your opponent like double the chance to open like a Molcharmy or a Drolan Lockbird or an Ash Blossom and something like that, right? Which is a little weird. So I think this card is fine at 1. I have no beef with it. I think it's kind of a fun iconic card. I don't mind it. Card of Demise. You guys are gonna hate me for saying the truth. This card's fun. This card's cool. This card's unique. The problem is the Floodgates. And not Demise. I said it. I said it, and I was right, and you can't do anything about it. This card's awesome. This card in my 60 card paleo decks, no floodgates to be found. One of the most based control style. I would love to be able to play this in like paleo. No floodgates would be involved. It would be awesome for grind games. It is true that this card suffers a lot from like having synergy with stun decks. But it's like, I mean, I understand why people hate it. I get it. I do get it. I just do think that if there were no floodgates involved, I think you guys would look at this card very differently. And I think the problem is the floodgates in this case. However, the floodgates exist. So as of now, I wouldn't bring this card back either without banning the floodgates. But I personally would just ban the floodgates. And then I think Card of Demise would enable a different kind of playstyle where it's just inherently the playstyle that this card promotes is very interactive if you're not playing floodgates. So that's my piece on this. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with it. I think that's fine. I mean, to this day, people blame the runic cards for when their opponent activates like Gozen match against them, which in my I can't wrap my head around it that people go and play against someone who's like activate fountain, set skill drain or whatever, and they're like, oh no, the fountain. I don't get it, but okay, sure. I think this card has the same problem. Like, people perceive it very differently because floodgates are in the game. This is funny. Chain Strike is limited. Genuine question. Is Chain Burn a problem if this card goes to 3? I don't think it would be. I think it'd probably be fine. Who said yes? Why did you say yes? Why is Chain Burn a problem? Chain Strike. Okay, here's the thing. I have another question. Do you guys think that if they made a quick play spell or trap card that just says inflict 2000 damage to your opponent, do you think that would be a problem? Yes? I don't know, man. I don't know if I agree. I don't know if I agree. 2000 is a lot of life points. I mean, yeah, but like, I don't know. I mean, okay, here's the thing. It would definitely be a problem if there was a critical mass of these kinds of cards, right? Like, what you have to look at, I think, in something like Chain Burn is how much damage does a card do on average, right? And if the cards in Chain Burn do 2000 damage on average and you can play a lot of them, then yes, it would absolutely be a problem. Because I mean, you open 5 cards or 6 if you're going second. If your average card does 2000 damage, you basically win the game on the spot, unless your opponent has a way to negate or destroy those cards before you can use them, right? But I don't know. I just feel like there's part of me who thinks that burn strategies are cringe, but then there's also part of me who thinks it's kind of sad that it's basically non-existent anymore. And what I mean by this is, like, burning these days is only relevant if it's an FTK, and I think that's cringe. But I think like a deck where you try to control the game and do like continuous burn damage over time and actually actually kind of interact with your opponent would be somewhat interesting, which is kind of what Eniacraft does, I guess. Yeah, no, actually Eniacraft is kind of what I described right now, so it does exist. Okay, never mind. I've changed my mind. It's a slippery slope. It is a slippery slope. It is a slippery slope because there's a very thin line or very narrow line between control and stall, right? I think a burn oriented control deck would be interesting. A burn oriented stall deck would be less interesting, right? Burn should not be a playable deck. I don't know. I feel like it's a legit strategy. Back in the day it was, but like, I don't agree that it shouldn't be a thing, period. I think it depends on how they would do it. I think being able to burn 8000 on turn 1 should absolutely not be a thing. Like FTK style, that should definitely not be a thing. Yeah. like a Nurse Reficule FTK kind of thing where you just do a bunch of gift cards and win on the first turn. That should absolutely not be a thing. Or Mystic Mind stall. That should not be a thing. But like, I actually think, Chain Burn specifically is very, very overhated. And it's typically, like very often it's a skill issue. Because Chain Burn, and I mean, I know this is an Ankh story, but Chain Burn usually was a deck that it mattered a lot how you played against it. Like it was usually in your own hands if you would win or lose to Chain Burn. Like a lot of people would just not know or understand how to play against Chain Burn. They would play against it like they would against any other deck. They would like generate card advantage, make big boards, attack with their biggest monsters into Magic Cylinder, put up a bunch of cards on the field and in hand, so they would take a whole bunch of damage from like Secret Barrel, and they would like make a lot of mistakes into it, and then they would lose because of that. And it's not like people who knew how to play it against Chain Burn, they would very rarely lose to it. And so I think that kind of deck is interesting to have around, but I know it's hard to do. Players just don't want to think that's a skill issue. I think having an issue with Chain Burn is a skill issue. I think having an issue with Stall Burn or FTK Burn is completely valid. Okay. Chaos Space. This card should be at 3. Is that just me? This card feels very fair for modern standards. I think this card's fine. I got no issue with that. I don't even know why this card is still here. I think this card should be at 3. Dragon Link good now? I don't even like, here's the funny thing. Dragon Link is the deck that got this card limited, right? But I don't think Dragon Link plays this anymore. Like, it's at 3 in Master Duel. No one plays it in Dragon Link, I think. Because it's now more like a Rocket deck. So this card doesn't even really have like a home right now. So I think this card should come back to 3. I think it's got no business being limited. Chicken Game. How do we, what are we thinking on Chicken Game? Is this a matter of it can be at 3 because who cares? I think it could be at 3, who cares? 1 is fine. I mean, one is definitely fine. Like, I'm not mad that this card is at 1. And I'm 99% sure it's at 3 in Master Duel. And no one really plays it. And ultimately, I mean, Upstart is at 3. Chicken Game in most cases is just like Upstart. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. It is a little bit more abusable than Upstart Goblin. I will say it has a couple of things because it's a field spell that you can do with it. You can cop it with Pseudo Space. You can pop it with Ancient Fairy Dragon to search a field spell. You can do you send it for Magician Souls to draw an extra card. Send it for Droplet. None of those use cases are necessarily inherently problematic though. I think it's fine. I think they could bring it back. I'm not going to be mad if they don't bring it back to 3. I don't really miss Chicken Game, but I feel like it could go to 3. It's weaker to removal inside when you're going into a board. Yeah, like when you activate it, your opponent can just fall into Virtuous Hit, for example. I think it's I think it could go to 3. I've never seen this card used for good gameplay. That's the counter argument, right? But it could be, right? Like you could play this in some decks for consistency. You could play this in some decks that want like Ascent for whatever. It's not inherently a toxic card because it draws a card. We've talked about Crossout Designate already. Divine Wind of the Mist Valley. If I remember correctly, this card has been limited forever. And off the top of my head right now, I do not remember why. I don't remember why this card was limited. It probably does have some FTK loop reasons. But if it is because of a loop, then why is it limited? The Birdman FTK? Ancient Fairy Dragon? Oh, but that's funny, isn't it? Because if it actually was a Ancient Fairy Dragon problem, would that not be obsolete nowadays because Ancient Fairy Dragon has an errata, so you cannot search the same field spell anymore? So the new text of Ancient Fairy Dragon would stop you from searching a second copy anyways. I think this card could be at 3. I'll just go out on a limb here. I think some sort of like goofy FTK from 2011 or 2012 or whenever this got limited probably ain't happening anymore these days. And especially with the Ancient Fairy Dragon errata, it probably doesn't matter. Probably doesn't matter. This is gonna be hella abused at 3. No, I think you're lying. I think you're lying. I don't know what to tell you. I don't think this is that abusable. I think you're lying to me. Did they limit Final Countdown because they refused to ban Mystic Mine? Am I remembering that correctly? Because I feel like this card was at 3 at some point and people did play it with Mystic Mine. This was limited in like 2005. Didn't people play this in Mystic Mine though? Am I misremembering this? I mean, I believe you that it's been limited for a while, but didn't people actually play it with Mystic Mine? They did. But how was that good? How was that good when it was at 1 and you might just draw it too late and you couldn't win anymore? It wasn't good? Oh, okay. Left arm offering? Right. But okay, I guess they would just try to find it before it was too late. It's Mystic Mine, you're gonna draw it? I mean, yes, but 20 turns, if this is the 5th last card in your deck, it's too late, is my point. Like, yes, you're guaranteed to draw it, but if you draw it too late, you can't win with it anymore because there's not enough turns left. Anyways, this card doesn't need to be on the ban list. At the same time, it is an alt win condition that inherently promotes stall. Like this card is only good in like an actual stall deck. Like this is the opposite of interactive. Like you would not play this in an interactive deck. It wouldn't make sense in an interactive deck. So we don't really gain anything from unbanning it. At the same time, I think it would just be decluttering the ban list. Like no one would play this. No one would actually play this. I don't think. I'll go out on a limb here and say I don't think this card is viable anymore. So yeah. Okay, I have a funny thought experiment. How many turns would have to be on this card for you to consider playing this card? Is my question. How many do you think this would have to be for people to actually consider playing it? 10? There's legit no way you play this if it says 10. I don't think you play this if it says 10 turns. Because you also have to keep in mind, you're not going to open this card every time. Like, you're going to build a deck around it. You're going to have to build a deck around it to eventually draw it and then still live that many turns. Like, I think 10 is too many. 5? So 5 turns, you activate it, that's 1. Your opponent gets a turn, that's 2. You get a turn, that's 3. They get a turn, that's 4. You get a turn, that's 5. So they have 2 turns after you use it. Your opponent has 2 turns after you use this card. I think that might be strong, yeah. That might be strong, because all it takes is like a Vaboku and a Threatening Roar next to it, and you can skip 2 of their turns if they don't have a way to negate or destroy those cards, which is not guaranteed. But it's an interesting thought experiment, I think. Crooked Cook. Sure, you can play Crooked Cook Final Countdown. But here's the thing. Once again, I'm gonna repeat. Like, if you manage to summon a Crooked Cook that your opponent cannot out, the number of turns on Final Countdown doesn't matter. If your opponent really cannot out it, it doesn't matter if it says 5 turns or 10 turns or 20 turns, as long as there's enough cards in the deck, I guess. But like, you know, that's not really a good argument. I think this card could come back. I think it's laughably bad these days. And here's Foolish Burial. This card, funnily enough, I feel like this card is kind of similar to Reinforcement of the Army and Bonfire, but even more generic. I I don't know how I feel about Foolish. I think in a lot of decks these days, like if I'm comparing it to other like random one of spells or other cards on the ban list, I think it is significantly less problematic than a Cult by the Grave or a Dimension Shifter or any of the Floodgates or whatever. Like when my opponent starts their turn and activates Foolish, it is kind of whatever to me. Like I don't remember the last time I've complained about Foolish Burial. Genuinely, I have no idea. I've definitely complained about cards like Shifter, like Called By or whatever. Like I have, but Foolish just feels like Rhoda to me in some decks. Like it's just another way to start or extend your plays. And so I think it's okay. I think Foolish is okay. And I mean, the perception of Foolish Burial, I think depends on what people are doing with it, right? It just depends on what you send and what that does. And I think usually the thing that you would complain about is more the thing that Foolish sends. Because in most cases, Foolish is just another way to access your engine. So the question is your engine too strong or is your engine fine? If your engine is fine, I don't care if you have Foolish Burial. If your engine does too much, I don't think the problem is Foolish Burial. I think the problem is your engine. So I wouldn't actually hate if they gave us more copies of Foolish. I think it's one of the more interesting cards on the limited list that they could bring up, and I would be interested to see what would happen. Maybe they would have to go back, but I think it's not that big of a problem actually. I don't actually mind it. And that's because it's not from the extra deck. You guys are saying Lavalval Chain, like it's not like you could, if Foolish was at 2 or if Foolish was at 3, it's not like you would build an entire deck around it because now it's at, you still wouldn't open it very often. Like less than half of your games, you would have access to it. It's not like I'm unhappy about it being at 1. Don't get me wrong. It's not like this needs to go back to 2 or 3 for me to be happy. I'm just saying, like, out of all of the limited cards, like there's some here that are where it just doesn't make sense that they're at 1. Then there's some here that should be banned. Then there's some where I think it's very good that they're at 1, like the Snatchy we talked about. And then there are some where I think it could actually be interesting to bring them back to 2 or 3 and see what would happen. And I think Foolish is one of those cards. At the same time, Foolish is a combo enabler, so I'm not unhappy it's at 1. But I think the problem is typically what the cards you send with Foolish are, not the card itself. I have a similar feeling about Foolish than I have it with Reinforcement of the Army, for example. And also, for that matter, I have similar feelings about Gold Sarcophagus. I think Gold Sarcophagus is, and this might surprise you as a Malice hater, I don't hate Gold Sarcophagus. I think it's okay for it to be limited. I mean, this is just Foolish, but for Banished. It's the same arguments for this card than for Foolish. I think if you're banishing a Dormouse with this, the problem is not the Gold Sarcophagus. The problem is what the Dormouse does in any given format. So I don't hate Gold Sarcophagus either. I like consistency. I guess you can tell from how I'm talking about these cards. I am not opposed to consistency. I just think that the ceiling is the thing that you have to adjust. If the ceiling of what you can do with the Gold Sarcophagus is fine, I think it can be at 2. I think it can be at 3. Same thing for Foolish. Same thing for Rhodas. Like, I like those kind of cards. I don't like when someone loses because they brick or because they get Veilered on something and they can't extend. I think those are not interesting games of Yu-Gi-Oh! I like when games are consistent. I like when decks can do what they want to do, as long as what they want to do is fine. And that's how I feel about Foolish, Gold Sarc, and the likes. Yeah. Confusing card, once again. So the timeline on Gateway of the Six Samurai is something that, as a fan of good game balancing, you're gonna find it very confusing. So, someone who was completely out of their mind made this card in 2009. And it was completely abusable, not once per turn, incredibly spammable, especially when it was at 3, loopable to infinite problems with this card, way too broken as well. Even when it wasn't looped, this card was insane. Has never been used for good, and eventually was banned. And everyone thought, okay, that was it. They made a mistake, they banned it. All right, cool. Fast forward to, I don't know when. I really don't know when, but they brought it back at some point. And now it exists again. And they even, and here's the funniest thing, they are aware of all the loops and crazy FTKs you can do with this card. They made a link monster that searches it. So the fact that it's limited doesn't matter anymore because you can search it. It's a crazy timeline to me. And now someone in chat said it's at 3 in Master Duel and it doesn't do anything at the moment. This is true. It is true. The card is at 3 in Master Duel. It's not viable. The problem with this card is it offers nothing good for the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! There's nothing enjoyable that's ever come from this card. This is one of those cards where it's if you never see this card, if you never play against this card, that is the perfect scenario. If you ever play against Master Duel, even if it's against 6 Samurais in Master Duel, even if it's just 1 out of 5,000 games, that game is going to be miserable. And that's not good. This card does not offer a good experience. I enjoyed playing it. Yeah, that's the problem. This card is the like one of the poster childs of fun for one player, not for the other. Because yes, if I'm sitting there in Master Duel in some random event and I win the coin toss and I go first and I'm doing some infinite combo shit to my opponent, yeah, I'm having the time of my life. My opponent doesn't. And it's not good. So I accept your argument. Yes, the card doesn't do anything, so who cares? I can get behind it. I don't really mind it. It's not like I'm complaining about Gateway being limited, but just in a realm of, if we're talking good game design, if we're talking balancing, this card should not exist, is all I'm saying. And I think it's hard to argue with that. I think if you look at what kind of combos this card enables, I think it would be very easy to see or to say, yeah, this should not happen. All right, it should not happen. Harpy's Feather Duster. I am okay with this card existing in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, even though it does hurt some of my pet decks a lot. Like, I don't know. I think back row hate is a weird thing in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, because in some ways it feels necessary to punish stun decks, which have been a problem. Stun decks aren't really a massive problem right now in Yu-Gi-Oh, but they were a few years ago. There was a lot of stun happening in different flavors. And Harpy's Feather Duster was one of the things that they brought back to combat it, I feel like. And that's fair enough. I personally would rather live in a world where trap decks as a whole are not frowned upon because they just get rid of the floodgates. Because here's the thing, a lot of people like associate trap decks with stun, which I think is a fair thing to think because Konami hasn't done a very good job at, you know, making a distinction between the two. But I think I for one, I do miss that the trap playstyle in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And when I say trap playstyle, I mean the interactive nature of traps, because I think it's kind of sad, because if you think about it, traps are inherently very interactive. The core idea of trap cards is interactive. It might not be how they're used nowadays, but the core idea of traps is interactive. The problem is that a lot of trap decks are slower than other decks, and so in order to help them slow the game down, Konami is giving them access to a bunch of floodgates, which in return makes them very unfun to play against and makes them have a very bad reputation. I think it's, at the moment, we are in a spot where it's very, very unrealistic for trap decks to ever become good again anymore, because we are living in a world with Feather Duster, Lightning Storm evenly matched, and so on, and they're probably going to bring Heavy Storm back as well. So there's like, if you think about it, and this is actually, I think it's a kind of sad thought, but there are better answers legal in Yu-Gi-Oh! To every single trap control strategy out there than to combo decks. We have better board breakers for Labyrinth than we have for Elf Notes. Think about that for a second. I think that's weird. Am I the only one who thinks that's weird? We have literally cards who are where it says you auto win against Lab, but we don't have those cards for Elf Note. it's I think it's weird. And the reason is that they refuse to ban floodgates and stuff like that. Like and we have a bunch of cards like that, even like Denko Sekka or whatever. Yeah, you're mentioning a bunch of those. So yeah, I don't know. I think the difference is just that combo has more negates than healthy trap decks. I mean, yeah, but that's precisely the issue, right? Like Raigeki is not the same as Feather Duster because the decks that put up a bunch of monsters typically have protection from Raigeki. And a lot of the trap decks don't have protection from Feather Duster unless you hard draw like a Solemn card, which are also not interesting. I would personally prefer to live in a world where trap decks are healthy and don't have the floodgates, and we don't need these cards. But it's not the world we live in. At the moment, Feather Duster, I think, is often being, like, when Feather Duster is being used against a non-trap deck, I think it's completely fine. Like, when you use it against a, like a mid-range, like, let's say you activate Duster against Branded. I think that's a healthy interaction, because you're not taking away everything, you're just taking away a part of the board. Like, you'll get, okay, get rid of the Retribution and the Fallen and the Virtuous, and then I'll play into the board. That interaction is fine, and that is mostly what Feather Duster is used for, so I don't have an issue with it in that sense. But I think it's a little sad that cards like this and Lightning Storm and even the existing don't really hurt combo decks, but they make it so that trap decks can probably never be good again. So yeah, it's kind of sad. As a fan of trap decks, I think it's sad. Infernity Launcher. Infernity is a weird one because realistically Infernity will probably never be meta again, so they unironically probably could bring this card back. And the reason I'm saying this is because Infernity will probably never have more than a 50% win rate, because it just cannot win going second, because you cannot play any way to interact with your opponent on the first turn. So I think this card could come back, because Infernity, like, yes, Infernity would be a cringe deck, because it would go first and it would set up a board with a bunch of negates and shit, and it wouldn't be fun to play against. The problem is we have like 15,000 decks in the game at this point who do this and are better than Infernity. Like, Elf Notes is just a better deck than Infernity, and it does the same thing. Especially in OCG and Master Duel, where it even has cards like Baron de Fleur and whatnot. But like Infernity as a combo deck, because it has to only play like it can't really play hand traps, I think would just always be a 50-50 pile. So yeah, isn't this the same as Gateway though? It goes in a not quite, because Gateway enables more FTKs, like actual FTKs and infinite loops. Infernity Launcher is just a quote-unquote normal combo deck. It's not exactly the same as Gateway. Infernity hand loops you with Trish into level 9 XYZ. Yeah, I'm not saying it's a healthy deck. I'm just saying that, like, it's just another combo deck, but with the restriction of it cannot play hand traps. So it's just a bad combo deck. It's not, I'm not saying it's fun. I'm not saying it's awesome. I'm not saying I want them to bring back this card. I'm just saying realistically, it's gonna be worse than most other combo decks we have. Instant Fusion. This card is one of those limited cards that I would rather see banned personally, because this card is just very, very dangerous. I mean, we all experienced it in Tearlaman's format, and there's a lot of different stuff you can do with it, and in some random decks it just becomes really, really strong. I don't like this card personally. I prefer it if this card didn't exist, because it's one of those things where it does heavily restrict the design of fusion monsters, because if they ever make a level 5 or lower fusion monster that's good, this card is very strong. Also, it's relatively searchable in some strategies, and I don't know, I just think we're better off if we don't have it. I think we're better off if we don't have it personally. So I think Instant Fusion should go. Into the Void, I am a little bit confused about, because this just feels like a worse Upstart Goblin to me. Is there any reason why this card should be limited but Upstart shouldn't? Because I know it's like searchable with the, what's it called? There's a card, like an Infernoid card, that when it's banished, it searches a Void card. But that is technically, I mean, with one copy, you can still search it. Upstart is worse when you want to burn for 8,000. Okay, in a burn FTK, this card is better than Upstart. All right, noted. None of those exist right now. I think this card is fine. I think we are past the point where cards like Upstart are concerning, and I think we're also past the point where like I mean, there just isn't like a draw your entire deck combo deck anymore, right? Like that used to be a thing, right? Like it usually FTKs a long time ago, FTKs would like chain a bunch of draw spells together to draw their entire deck and then do something with that. Nowadays, a lot of the FTKs just start with a 1-card combo that are like guaranteed to access everything. There no longer is this style of draw your entire deck and win. It doesn't exist. So I think Into the Void could come back. Yeah, I think it could come back. Let's talk about Ketu and Rahu Dracotail briefly. I mean, the things I would say about these are the same thing I said about Mululu earlier. We probably should have done them together. I'm a little sad that this had to happen. I agree that these cards are on here right now. I think it's okay. Dracotail is a very, very strong deck, and even with one of each, it has one of YCS. And I just hope, personally, I think the ideal timeline is that they tone down Albaz a little bit, because they have to do that anyways. And then when Albaz is toned down a little bit, I hope they give us these cards back in some capacity. They don't have to give us back 3 of each, but I think Dracotail, to me, still is probably the best designed archetype in a long time. I don't know exactly how long, but in a long time, I think Dracotail is my favorite archetype design. And I think it's kind of sad that they had to hit it this hard because it was so good with Branded. So yeah, I hope that these can come back at some point. Magical Midbreaker Field. Yeah, I mean, this card is just a combo enabler mainly, right? It's just a protect my stuff from hand traps kind of thing. It's not a good card anymore, so you don't even see the one of, but it does not really have healthy use cases. Does not really have healthy use cases. But I mean, probably one of the weaker cards in the limited section. But it's not really something I want back. When would you ever play this? I mean, there was a time when this card, I think, was it banned even? Was this banned or was it just limited? But like in the early days when combo decks were starting to get better, there were just less hand traps in general. So the main hand traps that people would use were like Imperm, Veiler, Ghost Ogre, and then of course Ash, and sometimes Droll. And this card would cancel a lot of those cards. It cancels Imperm, it cancels Veiler, it cancels Ghost Ogre. And so basically all you have to do is check for Droll and see if they have Ash, and then you can full combo. Before Nib and all that kind of stuff, this card was actually quite good in some combo decks. So, and also, yes, Terraforming, you could play it like as a optional target for Terraforming if your deck had other field spells. So, but yeah. You're probably right. It's not that good anymore. Yeah. All right, time for some evaluation. How do we feel about them bringing back Metamorphosis? Are we regretting it or are we okay with it? Personally, I am probably okay with it. I will say I have encountered this card only once in tournament play since they brought it back, and it was used by Fairy Tail in order to make a board that I couldn't beat. But I don't think the issue was Metamorphosis. I think it's kind of just like most others, like it's just another starter / extender in a combo deck. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. I don't really know if I would immediately put it to 3 or maybe have it chill as a limited card for a while to make sure it's cool. Because the thing is, when you put it to 2 or 3, people might actually start including something like Warrior of the Last Planet or whatever in your deck. Whereas if it's at 1, it's just not worth it. Like at the moment, where metamorph, like maybe one is perfect for metamorphosis because it's not worth building around. It's just a one of, so you're not gonna play like a toxic strategy around it. But if it's at 3, you might actually like sacrifice some extra deck spots for just in case you draw it and can auto win with it, right? So maybe 1 is like a sweet spot for it. Yeah. Because at 3, I mean, of course, you're not gonna build an entire deck around it because it's still only a 3 of in your deck. You're not guaranteed to have it, but you are more likely to draw it, and you might have like just like build in a secondary mode for your metamorphosis in case you draw it. If it had a hard once per turn, it would be fine at 3. This once again is the same argument as earlier. Whether this card is hard once per turn or not has zero to do with whether it should be at 3 or not. Who cares? Who cares? It's about what people do with this card. It has it barely. If this it's so hard. I don't know. It shouldn't be this hard to explain this. It should not be this hard to explain. But you're not gonna draw 2 copies of this very often. It barely matters. But we're not gonna get into this again. I maybe it's just rage bait. Maybe I'm being rage baited again. It might be. Monster Gate and Reasoning. I'll say it. Both of these cards are awesome. Both of these cards are fun, and they're keeping them limited is legit just keeping us from having fun. I don't know. These cards are not like. Look, here's the thing, right? Okay, there were a bunch of combo decks with these cards in the past, like Infernoid, where you would hope to draw one of these and then mill a bunch of your Infernoids. Here's news. In 2026, every deck can, with 1 card starters, do like guaranteed combos that are stronger than what you might maybe do with a Reasoning if you get lucky. Like every deck nowadays has strong 1 card combos, bro. Like let some meme decks have Reasoning and Monster Gate. Like every deck has like guaranteed combo lines that are stronger than what these cards do. Come on, man. Give me back these cards from my Paleo deck. This is Kit on crack. Bro, we cannot be at a point where you think that Reasoning and Monster Gate are better cards than Kit Kalos. We cannot have a conversation if that's what you think. If you don't see the difference between an unsearchable spell card and an extra deck monster you can summon every game, we can't have a good discussion like this, man. That's gotta be rage bait. It cannot be anything else. Monster Reborn could be approximately at 40, and no one would play it, I think. They could make a rule tomorrow that says you can include any number of Monster Reborns in your deck, and no one would care. This is just flavor. Sure. I mean, I guess no one is suffering from the fact that there's only 1 Monster Reborn. But like on a serious note, I think that this is a somewhat interesting card that I could see including in some decks, and I think it would be interesting to have access to 3 copies. And I think this is one of the least problematic cards on the ban list total. Like, this is just not a broken effect. But it has niche use cases for going first. It has niche use cases for going second. It's an interesting card. Now someone is going to be in chat right now and say like, oh, but it needs to be once per turn if they bring it back to 2 or 3, and that's going to make me mad. So we're going to move on before someone does that. Obedience Schooled. Obedience Schooled, maybe a hot take. I don't think it's that hot of a take, but this card had no business ever being on the ban list, and the only reason they put it on the ban list was because they refused to. I mean, that was basically that they did this before, like when Yummy came out, and they didn't want to hit any Yummy cards yet, and they also refused to ban Arclight to properly hit it, so they hit Obedience Schooled, which you guys are not gonna like what I'm about to say, but Obedience Schooled was the least powerful card in Yummy, especially going first, because you just couldn't make the good board if you started with Obedience. And you couldn't do Arclight, you couldn't play around Nib very well. It was one of the weaker cards in Yummy. It was the weakest card into Molcharmi Fuwalos by far. Because you didn't really have like a good plan B under Fuwa. Like this card was not great in Yami. The only problematic use case of this card, and this is not Obedience Schooled fault, the only problematic thing you can do with Obedience Schooled is like Naturia Beast. This card should be at 3, I think. I think the lock on this card is fair, and I don't think there's anything crazy. I mean, it is a good card, but I don't think there's anything crazy you can do with it outside of Naturia Beast. And Naturia Beast should not exist. So I don't hate Obedience Schooled. I think it died because they didn't want to hit Yami properly early. But it's not once per turn. Ru needs to stay limited. One Day of Peace is a weird one because this card is just bad. This is straight up just a bad card. It's just worse Upstart Goblin. But it does have some stall applications, I guess. I don't know if anyone would. I really don't know. I don't like this card either, but I don't know if it's like, you know, broken in Final Countdown. Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I really don't know. The thing is, once again, this is one of these cards where if they keep it limited, there's no damage. Like no one misses this card. Who cares? But even if they bring it back, no one would care either. Like, bro. Yeah, no. Ritual of Light and Darkness can stall with One Day of Peace. You guys understand that this card is limited, right? If that was a good thing, if this card was good, if this card had good use cases like this, people would already do this. People would already play this card if it was good, but it's not. 3 of this card would have won your duel against Jesse yesterday. True. If it was in my deck, which it wasn't because it's bad. Mystic Mind used to play it. And what do you think the problem was in that equation? Do you think the problem was Mystic Mind or the problem was One Day of Peace? Think about that for a second. 1-for-1 is one of these random... I don't like this card. I don't even necessarily think it's too broken. It's just one of those cards that I have like an unreasonable hate for. Because it's something in me, I dislike this idea of I have to invest a card and it has to be a monster to start my plays. It's just annoying. It's just like it's like a searcher, but with a cost, like a sign at mining, but you do get a special summon, not a search. So like that's better in some ways. I don't like it. I just don't like playing with this card. I don't enjoy having to discard one of my monsters to even be able to play. But realistically, I don't think this card is that good anymore. I don't know. I think like what do you think between 1-for-1 and Foolish? What do you think which one do you think the better card is? I guess it depends on the deck. It always depends on context. I guess it does depend on the context a little bit. Because in some decks, 1-for-1 is better. In some decks, Foolish is better. I think overall, Foolish is the better card, though. Because it's less investment. It's just less investment. It's just a good card, period. And this one is more situational. Did we forget Snake Eyes? Once again, I don't know how many times I'm saying this today, but the problem with Snake Eyes was not 1-for-1. The problem with consistency cards, the problem with extenders is not that they exist. The problem is what you can do with that. If 1-for-1 summons Snake Eye Ash and that does all of that, the problem in this equation is not 1-for-1. The problem is Snake Eye Ash and what it did. It's not 1-for-1. So realistically, I don't think they are going to. There are just some cards on this ban list, and it is something that someone mentioned previously. I think some of these cards are just iconic one-ofs in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, like 1-for-1, Foolish Burial, and Monster Reborn or whatever. So for that matter, I don't think they're going to bring 1-for-1 back to 2 or 3 anytime soon. It's just a relatively iconic limited card. It's been at 1 forever. Sometimes it sees play, sometimes it doesn't. That's just fine. It's never really causing any problems, so why risk putting it to 2 or putting it to 3? I get it. It doesn't do any damage if it's at 1. It can stay there. It's fine. but I don't think it necessarily needs to be at 1. It's okay. Pot of Prosperity is one of the best. Like, this is also a consistency card, so I don't hate Pot of Prosperity, but I do think this is one of the best consistency cards they've ever made. And the one thing I dislike about Pot of Prosperity is that it's more than just consistency, because it's basically it's everything, right? It's not just, this is not just engine. This does not just make your deck more consistent. This is also non-engine if you already have a play. If you already have a starter, you can Prosperity for an extender. You can Prosperity for a way to negate a hand trap. You can Prosperity for non-engine. This is, I think, one of the best, like, utility spells they've ever made, and I honestly think this card is bannable. I don't really miss this card in Master Duel where they banned it, and especially also with best of 3 in the TCG, where like you just have a higher chance of finding your side deck cards that you sided in for going first or whatever. I don't hate Prosperity, but I also don't love it. I don't think it's worth hanging on to just for the sake of it existing. So I think this card is actually bannable. I also don't think it's a huge problem, but I think it is bannable. Prosp is not even that good now. That is just not true. Prosp is still a really, really good card, and it's being played in every deck that can afford to play it. So I don't know what you're talking about. This card will always be good as long as it exists. It just depends on the deck. Like, yeah, Branded can't afford to play it, but a lot of other decks can and will. Premature Burial. Personally, I feel the same way about this card as I feel about Monster Reborn. I don't think this card is very good. I don't think it matters if this card is at 1, 2, or 3. I think they could bring this back. This card does have some more... I mean, people always mention abuse potential with it being an equipped spell that you can bounce to your hand. I've never seen anyone do that since like 15 years or something. So I think this card can be at 3. Doom Z is the only use at the moment, and even Doom Z doesn't really play it, do they? I don't think they play it. I've seen some people do it, but I think most of the time they don't. So I think it can come back to 3. Radiant Typhoon Chant. I still don't agree with limiting this personally. I think Radiant Typhoon is cool. And I was pleasantly surprised seeing that Radiant Typhoon can still do okay. Like, there was still some people doing well with Radiant Typhoon, which I was happy about. But I still think this was a little bit harsh on Radiant Typhoon. Like, I mean, okay, Radiant Typhoon can bridge into other stuff, and that is potentially a problem. But I mean, they still have 3 Swen, 3 Eldam, 1 Chant, and they can all still bridge. So I don't really think that was that basically just hit your Radiant Typhoon, and I don't think that was necessary. So I think this card could go back to, and like, maybe make it 2. Let's do a compromise. Let's do 2. 1 was too harsh. I understand that they wanted to hit it though, so put it to 2. Why not? Okay, we did Reasoning, we did Rhoda, we did the Sangan cards. This card, dude. Why is Sekka's Light still limited? Why on earth? Sekka's Light is a really, really cool card, and it's not even good anymore, realistically. I haven't seen... I mean, I've used it in, like, the all hand traps deck, but it wasn't even that good there. I don't know why they ever hit this card, and I definitely think they should have reverted it a long time ago. I think it's a very interesting design space. This is like giving people a reason to play a deck with only this as their spell and only monsters. It's like Super Heavy Samurai, but for a healthy reason. Super Heavy Samurai was like, you play only monsters because your deck can do crazy combos and insane auto wins. And this is like, you can play only monsters so your deck has Pot of Greed in it. I was like, okay, dude. Yeah, Mermail played it in Master Duel for a second. Mermail played it in Master Duel for a second. But realistically, I felt like, I mean, once again, the problem was not Sekka's Light. The problem was what Neptubis does to a human being. So, I don't know. I like this card. I think it should come back. Set rotation, and I guess by extension, terraforming. Once again, consistency for field spells. I think these cards are fine at 1, but at the same time, it is the same consistency argument. They're not like outrageous cards that need to be limited or banned. I think set rotation does have some other aspects to it, like removing your opponent's field spell or potentially being a floodgate by giving your opponent a field spell that they can't use, so they can't get rid of it. For the record, I think these cards are going to stay at 1 for a long time, and I think it's fine like that. The same way with Reinforcement of the Army. I just don't think they have like an active reason to take these cards off the ban list right now, but they're not like the most outrageous things. At the same time, like it's a little confusing to me when like you think that Terraforming is such a good card that you have to limit it, and then they make a new Rainbow Bridge that also searches field spells. So now we have more copies of field spells anyways, so decide. What do you want? Is it okay to search field spells or not? I don't know. Master Duel does have Terraforming banned, and I also, once again, I don't really miss it, but I also don't think it ever bothered me when it was at 1. It's more about the power of the field spells in the game and the power of like what those field spells can search and what those field spells do, basically, that you should take a closer look at. Like, Terraforming being banned doesn't make it okay to make a broken field spell, and vice versa, right? This is the most bannable Sky Striker card right here. You heard it here first. And I don't know if you expected me to say this, but this card I think is bannable because I mean, I think the perfect timing to ban this card has already passed, but the perfect timing to ban this card was before Yummy. It's just like a very obnoxious way to abuse Sky Striker in other decks. You guys know I love Sky Striker and I will die on this hill. I think pure Sky Striker is one of the fairest decks we have in the game, and this playstyle should be conserved at any cost. Because without decks like Sky Striker, everything is just combo decks. But Hornet Drones is not essential for Sky Striker. Like, Sky Striker does not need Hornet Drones, but a lot of other decks did a lot of crazy things with Hornet Drones in the past. And I think it's not worth having, honestly. I think Hornet Drones could be banned and no one would really miss it because it's only being used to like spam bodies in combo decks. Like bridge into 2 bodies for this, bridge into 2 bodies for Yummy, bridge into 2 bodies for Orcus, bridge into 2 bodies for whatever, you name it. Not necessary. We don't need it. This card should probably stay limited, even though it's bad, right? I mean, in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, it probably doesn't happen anymore, but yeah, this card was probably limited because of the slash draw FTK. I don't know who would ever play such a deck and even top a YCS with it. I don't know who would ever do such a thing, but it's probably better that this card is limited, so it's not possible anymore. Sync for Overtake. I mean, it's a very recent Cool Tune hit, so I don't think we have to discuss this. This is not going to come back anytime soon. This is the kind of card that will probably come off the ban list in a time when, like, Cool Tune isn't a thing anymore. At the same time, it could also just be that they could decide to ban it to hit Cool Tune even further, because it also is searchable with the Duelist Genesis. So one way to hit Cool Tune even further is to get rid of it completely. There's also another outcome to this where maybe they keep it limited for a very long time because it's just a good generic card. Whenever there's a new synchro deck coming up, it might be good in it. I don't mind it being limited, and this one is significantly better than something like just a consistency card like a Rhoda, because this is just unlike 1-for-1, it doesn't need a discard, and it is just a special summon from deck or grave, which is really powerful, and that is, I think, worth limiting. I think this is okay to be at 1, especially because you can still access it, but that comes with its own, like, Duelist Genesis has downsides because you do need a tuner to activate it, so it's not straight up like searchable. It's searchable under a condition. Talked about Terraforming. As much as I love this card, because of the deck that the Paleo deck that I won a YCS with, I think in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, this card probably does more bad than good. I mean, realistically, the 60 card Paleozoic deck was an outlier in terms of healthiness. Like, most other decks at the time did some crazy shit with grass looks greener. And even in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Especially, whenever this card happens, it is kind of crazy. Yeah, don't bring it back, I guess. Don't bring it back to 2 or 3, even though I love this card, but probably don't bring it back. Triple Tactics Talent. I have a love-hate relationship with this card. And simply, the thing is, this card is very polarizing to me, personally, because I think this is one of the coolest cards for the player going second, and one of the more toxic cards for the player going first. Which overall, I think, is ban-worthy. Because, like, I think the cons just outweigh the pros in this case. Like, the fact that this is a cool card at breaking a board does not make up for how broken this card is going first. Once again, this card is not as bad as Called by the Grave in terms of design, to me personally, because I think, like, negating a hand trap is more toxic than punishing your opponent for using a hand trap, but punishing your opponent for using a hand trap is still pretty cringe. So yeah, I mean, it combines a lot of bad aspects. This card is better going first than going second in most formats. It hand rips. Yeah, probably better to ban it. Okay, we can probably combine these cards into one. Okay, so there are currently 8 trap cards that are limited in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. Let's just... Magical Explosion is an FTK enabler, so this is like an odd one out. This one, limited is because you probably usually had to have 2 of it to win the game. You could probably still FTK if you really wanted, though. So I don't even know if this card is any good anymore. Because you could still FTK with, like, activate a Magical Explosion and then copy it with rollback or something. But, like, Magical Explosion is kind of whatever, who cares? Out of all the other ones, there is an odd one out here. We've got Anti-Spell, Goes and Match, Naturia Sacred Tree, Rivalry of Warlords, Skill Drain, Solemn Judgment, and There Can Be Only One. Now, some of you might think that the odd one out is Solemn Judgment because all of the other ones are continuous traps. Maybe that was your guess. In which case, good guess, wrong answer anyways. The odd one out is Naturia Sacred Tree. What the hell is this still doing in the limited section? Why is this here? What? Bring this back yesterday. What the hell? All the other ones here. I mean, Solemn Judgment is still a decent bit healthier than all of the floodgates, but all of these floodgates, every time I'm reminded about the fact that these are limited, it just makes me mad. There Can Be Only One, Skill Drain, Rivalry, Goes and Match, and Anti-Spell should all be banned, and they should have all been banned 5 years ago or even longer. Floodgates are one of the biggest problems in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Next to overly powerful combo decks, and we should have gotten rid of these. Like, when we limited them, we should have had the foresight to ban them. Like, and the thing is, these cards don't even have anything positive going on for them, because with something like Shifter, you could argue like, oh, at least it gives the player going second a chance or whatever, which is true. Going second is bad in Yu-Gi-Oh! And Shifter helps that sometimes, so that's one argument you can make for it. With these cards, 100% benefit for the player going first, nothing else. Usually, whenever these cards are involved, there's no Yu-Gi-Oh! Being played. People side deck these cards very frequently for going first, just to get a quick auto win off of your opponent. It's miserable gameplay experience. It's a miserable viewing experience as well whenever it happens at tournaments. And they should all be banned, no exception. Every single one of them should be. Now, people are even going out of their way now with the Pharaonic Advent to search these cards. They've become searchable now in a lot of combo decks, which is absolutely cringe. It's insanely cringe. Solemn Judgment is a little bit different because it is just quote unquote an Omni Negate. This card is not nearly as broken as the Floodgates. However, it has, like, Yu-Gi-Oh has become it has come to a point where it's so much about resolving one card combos and stuff that I think just negating your opponent's starters or board breakers is just very uninteresting, very uninspired. I just think, like, everyone citing a bunch of Solemns for going first is just one of the least interesting things going on in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's something that happens a lot. In a lot of formats, people even choose the negations over the Floodgates, which is very weird. The only problem is if you ban Solemn Judgment, there is a bunch of replacements waiting in the wings. Solemn Warning, Solemn Strike, Solemn Accusation, which they made as recently as like 2 sets ago. So these counter traps are not going to go anywhere. I think that's cringe. I think citing a bunch of cards for just negating your opponent's cards when you go first is not very interesting. And I eventually, somewhere down the line, I would love for them to get rid of the Solemn cards. I don't think they add anything to the game. I don't think they make it more interesting, more interactive. I think just negating starters is not fun. So get rid of Solemn Judgment and then eventually get rid of the other Solemns as well. But like the entire, literally, there should not be any of these cards in the limited section. Some of these shouldn't be on the ban list. Sacred Tree and Magical Explosion probably shouldn't be on the ban list. And all these other traps should straight up just be banned because they're not interesting. So that's that. And that brings us to the end of the limited section. Now, we have a little bit more time. Actually, we don't have that much time, but I do want to do the semi-limited because I don't think semi-limited warrants a video on its own because there's only like 10 cards. So let's knock out the semi-limited cards and then we're done with all the ban list talk. Okay. Dracotail Lucius and Dracotail Arthalion are very inconsequential semi-limits. Overall, Arthalion didn't matter at all. No one played more than 2 Arthalions anyways in branded Dracotail towards the end of the format, so that was more of a meme hit. Almost as bad as the hit to Kapsi Yamiwe. Lucius to 2 matters somewhat, but realistically, the thing that has hit Dracotail the most is the limits. So these are fine. Droll Lockbird, it's a polarizing topic. I know it is. I don't want to get into the super in-depth Droll Lockbird discussion. My takeaway from it is, I think Droll Lockbird is one of the biggest problems in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! I think it's one of the cards that makes games the least interesting, especially when the player going first has it to back up their board. I think it makes boards be pretty much unbreakable. I think the only argument for Droll Lockbird is that it keeps combo decks in check when you're going second. The solution is the following. They need to make a replacement for Droll Lockbird. We do need something like this for going second. I will admit this. We do need something that helps you beat combo decks when you go second. However, this card in its current form should not exist. This card is arguably even better for the player going first than the player going second, which is very problematic. TLDR, make a new version of it that has something to it that makes it more usable going second than going first. I don't know, give it the Molcharmi treatment or something. Make something that punishes your opponent for searching a lot. I'm all here for it, but Droll Lockbird in this current form should not exist. This card is lingering Floodgate, not interesting, way better going first than going second usually. It shouldn't exist in this shape or form. They need to do something about it. I think it's one of the worst gameplay experience cards at the moment, especially looking at how popular it is. It just ruins way too many games, period. Ice Ryziel and Sword Ryziel, random consistency hits to Ryziel. You know I'm not a big fan of that. They should have banned Ryziel Cross. These cards are here for a good reason, but then also not. I don't know. I don't agree with consistency hits like this, and I think you should hit the ceiling of the deck, not how often they open a starter. Good. I have good news for you guys. The semi-limit on Sharvara doesn't make any sense, but I actually think that this card is going to go back to 3 because Unchained is getting support soon, and I think they're going to use that as an opportunity to put it back to 3. I think they are just saving it for that, is how I feel about it. Because like no one in their right mind thinks that Unchained Soul of Sharvara should be at 2. When they get the support from the Revolution pack, I think they're going to put it back to 3, is my prediction. I think that's how it makes sense. I think they're saving it for that, and then it's going to happen, is how I feel about it. Same thing for Malice in Underground that I said about Dormouse and White Rabbit. I don't have an issue with Malice in Underground as a card while Whitebinder is banned. This is just, once again, starter/extender. And I'm going to apply the same logic as I did with the other cards. I'm not going to change my logic just because it's Malice and I dislike Malice. Starters and extenders are okay cards to exist. It's all about what these cards can do. And if Whitebinder is banned, then Malice in Underground is a much more fine card. And especially if they tone down the level of non-engine in Malice, then Malice is fine to exist and have consistency. That's okay. And then there's Pearly cards on here. Can someone explain the Pearly? The semi-limited section is a weird place. Because so far, there's 10 cards on here at the moment. I genuinely think none of them needs to be here. Like, if we're doing proper balancing, I'm gonna be real with you. I think none of these cards are here and are either at 3 and something else is hit, or they're just banned. Like, none of these cards should realistically be here. Like Sleepy Memory, Delicious. I can't explain this. I would love to say something about this, but I can't. I can't explain it. Should any card be semi-limited? It's an interesting question, actually, because I do fundamentally disagree with the semi-limited section as a whole. I don't think it needs to be here. If you semi-limit something, it should only have something to do with resource management. I think semi-limiting a card for resource management purposes is actually useful. Actually, I think Arthalion is probably the most useful semi-limit here if they did it earlier. If they did Arthalion semi-limit as like a pre-hit to Dracotail, that would have been good. Because in the beginning, when it was pure Dracotail, people actually played 3 Arthalion, and it would have been an interesting semi-limit. The problem is they semi-limited it when it was already a 2-of, and no one played 3 anymore. There are cases where a semi-limit makes sense. I don't like it when it's just for consistency. Malicious makes sense. Zodiac Ratpier would make sense. Other cards that are highly searchable, like if they put Prayers to 2, that would make sense. At least some sense. You know, there's a couple of examples of how to use the semi-limited section in a good way. Most of these cards on here are not a good example of this. Like Droll and Lockbird is not okay at 2. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, and then there's Runic Fountain. No good Runic deck has ever played 3 Runic Fountains. Why? I mean, you know, doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense. The semi-limited section is a weird one, but that's why I wanted to include it in this one, because I don't think it would have made a good like video on its own. But yeah. So this was the entirety of the limited and the semi-limited section. And with that, we have talked about the entire Yu-Gi-Oh! Ban list and discussed every single bit of it, at least as of now. Maybe we'll revisit it in a couple, I mean, probably not in the near future, maybe in like a few years. But I think these were interesting talks. If you're watching this on YouTube and you've watched all the way until now, I mean, probably no one's going to see this because it's going to be a long video again. But make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments down below if you watched on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe and all the good stuff. And I guess now all there's left to do is wait for the next update to see if any of this changes and what they're going to do to the current meta decks. Because, I mean, we are probably expecting a ban list update in like the next month or 2. So I guess we'll see how things develop from here. Now discuss every unlimited card. Yeah, okay. That's next. Tomorrow we are discussing every unlimited card in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Let's go. Who's here for it?